Chapter 3797. But even so, Meng Tong still chose to continue to feign weakness and numb his opponent, waiting for an opportunity to deliver a fatal blow. Not to mention whether his acting was good or not, just his scheming was hard to come by. Walking to the ring, Meng Tong stared at Xiao Honkai and sneered. "I was tricked by you in the last round, which was why I was barely able to force you into a lose-lose situation. Today, I won't be so lucky. Even if I haven't fully recovered from my injuries, killing you is as easy as killing a chicken." Unexpectedly, Xiao Honkai curled her lips indifferently and said, "Are these your last words, great newcomer Meng? It sounds like you haven't made any arrangements for your funeral." Meng Tong was speechless. After being stunned for a moment, he gritted his teeth and snorted coldly. Sharp-tongued. "You don't know the meaning of death." Seeing that both sides were ready, the referee immediately announced, "The first match of the fourth round of the Blue Cloud Pavilion Newcomer Challenge. Abode 13 Xiao Honkai challenges Abode 12 Meng Tong. Begin!" As soon as he finished speaking, Meng Tong's figure shot out like an arrow from a bow. He threw away his weak disguise, which had yet to recover from his injuries, towards Xiao Honkai. Without hesitation, he used his strongest move, the Thousand Legs 21 style. He was prepared to cut through the Gordian knot. Any disguise could not be delayed for too long. As long as he achieved the effect of confusing his opponent, he had to immediately tear off his disguise and take the opportunity to deliver a fatal blow. Otherwise, if it dragged on for too long, he would reveal his flaws. This was the strategy that Meng Jiuguang had taught him. According to common sense, tearing off his disguise and launching an all-out attack right from the start was enough to catch his opponent off guard. If his opponent was injured, it would be easy to kill him in one blow. In order to pursue results, Meng Tong did not even have the intention to use the Thousand Legs Phantom Shadow to test the waters. Instead, he attacked with all his might right from the start. However, what surprised Meng Tong and Meng Jiuguang was that Meng Tong's sudden attack, which tore off his disguise, was forcefully blocked by Xiao Hongcai's 21st style of cold iron palm. F***CK. "You trash, how dare you pretend to be injured to scare me? Despicable and shameless!" Feeling the sharp pain from his leg, Meng Tong's face instantly turned green. He had always thought that she was like Xiao Hongcai. It was impossible for her to get a rare 4th-grade recover pill. It was impossible for her to recover in just 3 days. Therefore, when he saw that Xiao Hongcai's footsteps were weak, he had the first impression that this guy was really injured. From the beginning to the end, neither Meng Tong nor Meng Jiuguang had any doubts. They had never thought that this trash would have the same idea as Meng Tong. Otherwise, how could a mere injured person make such a powerful cold iron palm? Moreover, it was so overbearing that it could hit back Meng Tong's Thousand Legs 21st style. In order to trick people, he did not hesitate to throw in a 4th-grade recover pill. But this time, he did not hit the goose, but was pecked in the eye first. In the audience, Meng Jiuguang could not help but blush. In his usual understanding, Lumber Waist was obviously the same as Meng Tong. They both had a straightforward temper. How did he suddenly become so insidious? What made him even more puzzled was that Xiao Honkai was obviously seriously injured before. But in just 3 days, he was now as lively as Meng Tong, who had taken a 4th-grade recover pill. How the hell did he do it? With the meager resources of Lin Yi's group, it was impossible for them to take out such a rare 4th-grade recover pill. Could it be Lu Bianren? Thinking about it, only Lu Bianren, the 3rd Pavilion Master, had the ability to get a 4th-grade recover pill. Damn it, wait until I become the 3rd Pavilion Master, see how I will deal with you, meddlesome old thing. While Meng Jiuguang was holding a grudge against Lu Bianren, Xiao Honkai on the stage looked at Meng Tong and sneered. "Same to you. We are all the same. How dare you say that I am despicable?" Meng Tong was speechless. Even he himself was pretending. But Xiao Honkai had the same idea. What was so strange about giving him a taste of his own medicine? After a while, Meng Tong snorted coldly. "Humph! Well, since it has been exposed, there is no need to continue hiding. I will use my strength to trample you to death. I will let you see how big the gap between us is. Xiao Honkai suddenly laughed. You are talking about being upright when your conspiracy has been exposed. Great newcomer Meng, did you learn your shamelessness from one of your cousins? As soon as he said that, the audience couldn't help but laugh. One of my cousins, that Xiao Honkai was talking about was Meng Jueguang. He was indirectly scolding Meng Jueguang for being shameless. Hearing this, Meng Jueguang's face turned black. He clearly knew that Trash Xiao, this bastard, was beating around the bush and scolding him, but he couldn't fight back. After all, Trash Xiao was only talking about Meng Tong's certain cousin, and not his ninth cousin. If he were to speak at this time, wouldn't he be taking the initiative to take the initiative and slap his own face? Fortunately, the awkwardness didn't last long. On the stage, Meng Tong had already used his actions to fight back for him. Without saying anything, he directly turned into thousands of leg shadows and pounced on Xiao Honkai. Because of the last round, both Meng Tong and Xiao Honkai had a deep understanding of each other's strength. It was clear at a glance where the other was strong and where the other was weak. There was nothing they could hide from each other. As the saying goes, the one who understands you the most is your enemy. So from this point of view, Meng Tong's so-called upright was somewhat reasonable. Since they knew each other like the back of their hand, there was no place for them to hide, and there was no chance for them to trick each other. The only choice for both sides was to use their strongest strength and fight to the death again. The following battle between the two once again showed everyone what cruelty and tragedy was. Just as Xiao Honkai was hit by the Thousand Legs 21 style, Meng Tong immediately had to follow up with the Cold Iron Palm 21 style. Coughing up blood was considered a light punishment. After a few exchanges, the final situation was exactly the same as the previous round. After a few exchanges, both sides were once again sprawled on the ground, unable to move. This time, the injuries they suffered were even more severe than the previous round. It was completely wishful thinking for them to stand up again. The fact that they were able to hold their breath and not die was already a rare feat for them to have such strong willpower. Looking at this seemingly familiar scene, everyone present was instantly dumbfounded. All of them were flabbergasted. Aren't the strength of these two people a little too similar? They've fought twice in a row, and both of them were actually injured? Chapter 3798. After a moment of stalemate, Meng Jueguang could only helplessly invite the pavilion master over again. Although he had learned from the previous mistakes, this was still outside the rules. The final verdict could only be decided by Hu Yufeng. Others, including the judges, did not have this authority, and they could not afford to take this risk. It's these two again? Hu Yufeng heard the news and came over. Looking at Xiao Honkai and Meng Tong, he was speechless. He looked at Meng Jueguang, but this time, there was no room for private discussion with Meng Jueguang. After all, the same situation had happened in the previous round. In order to maintain the glorious image of fairness, he, as the pavilion master of the Welcome Pavilion, could only follow the previous round's rules. Otherwise, if he changed the rules, he would be slapping his own face in the next round. Not only would this matter become a joke, but it would also be fermented by people with ulterior motives. When the time comes, who knows how much of a storm it would stir up. Although Meng Jueguang had now joined young Master Su's side, and Hu Yunfeng indeed had the intention to rope him in, the premise was that it could not affect his own future. Otherwise, when it concerned his own future, not to mention a mere Meng Jueguang, he might not even give face to young Master Su. Clearing his throat, Hu Yunfeng then announced, "Although both sides were injured, according to the precedent of the previous round's winner, I hereby announce that the winner of this challenge is Xiao Honkai from the 13th cave at the foot of the mountain." Hearing this, Meng Jueguang's face instantly turned as black as the bottom of a pot. He did not hesitate to throw a 4th-grade recover pill on Meng Tong. In the end, not only did he not kill Xiao Honkai, but he was also given a taste of his own medicine by the other party. He forcibly snatched back 4 points and became the winner. This kind of trivial matter, just thinking about it already made Meng Jiuguang so aggrieved that he almost vomited a mouthful of old blood. After all, this duel wasn't just between Meng Tong and Xiao Hongkai. Both of them represented Meng Jiuguang and Lin Yi. Meng Tong was the most capable newcomer under Meng Jiuguang, but he had lost to a mere minion under Lin Yi. This made Meng Jiuguang, the eldest senior brother, lose face. However, the matter was already settled. No matter how aggrieved Meng Jiuguang was, he did not dare to raise any objection to Hu Yinfeng's words in public. After all, Hu Yifeng was also under young Master Su's faction. They both had the same backer, and their status and strength were far above him. Moreover, Hu Yifeng was his direct superior. It was clear who listened to whom. If Meng Jiuguang could not even understand this point, he would not have received young Master Su's recognition. It was the same Xiao Hongkai and Meng Tong, and both were equally injured. In the previous round, Hu Yifeng was unscrupulous enough to judge Meng Tong as the winner. In the end, it had only been 3 days, and he was immediately met with retribution. This situation was really ironic. In the previous round, when Xiao Hongkai was judged to have lost, everyone at the scene felt a little sad. But this round, when the same thing happened to Meng Tong, not only did the crowd not feel that it was unfair, but they also felt that this slap in the face was very satisfying. Don't forget, these newcomers were already under Meng Jiuguang's command in name. They were in the same camp as Meng Tong. However, this self-proclaimed leader of the newcomers, Meng Tong's character was really too bad. His relations with others were just too bad. Not only did Li Jingming, who was repeatedly tricked by him, even the other newcomers did not buy it. If young Master Meng knew of this result, it was really unknown how he would feel. However, this situation was not entirely bad for Meng Tong. After all, at the same time that he had 4 points deducted, his cave ranking had also dropped back to cave number 13 at the foot of the mountain, falling behind Xiao Hongkai and regaining the initiative. And more importantly, although he had fallen into the awkward situation of being seriously injured again, and there was still Xiao Ran, Lin Yi's right-hand man behind him, once he was challenged, he would not be able to fight back at all. However, he had already been challenged by Xiao Hongkai once today. According to the rules of the challenge, he had the right to reject any subsequent challenges. In other words, even if Xiao Ran wanted to hit him when he was down, at least he would not have the chance to do so in this round. This was a rare piece of good news. With an experienced master like Meng Jiuguang, Xiao Ran's strength in the early stage of foundation establishment had already been seen through when he fought against Chao Wu in the last round. According to the previous strength of the perfect stage of heaven stage, even if they were both in the early stage of foundation establishment, Xiao Ran's real combat power was probably above Xiao Hongkai. This could be seen from the previous round when Xiao Ran threw Chao Wu out of the ring without any effort. If it was Xiao Hongkai who had also just succeeded in foundation establishment, or even Meng Tong who had been in foundation establishment for a period of time, they would not be able to do it as smoothly and easily as him. Lumber Waste alone had already fought with Meng Tong in 2 rounds consecutively, and both sides suffered. If there was an even stronger Xiao Ran, then whether it was Meng Tong who bore the brunt of the attack or Meng Jiuguang who stood behind the scenes, they would only be at a disadvantage. The most ironic thing was that these 2 people were only Lin Yi's underlings. Lin Yi did not even need to make a move himself. Just these 2 underlings were enough to force Meng Jiuguang and Meng Tong into a mess. The dignified senior brother who was in charge of the newcomers in Blue Cloud Pavilion and the future 3rd Pavilion Master of the Welcome Pavilion was in a terrible situation because of the underlings of a newcomer and the secular world. How could they endure this? Although it could be said that Meng Tong had escaped this round due to the rules of the challenge, he was still helpless about what to do in the next round. Xiao Hongkai was in front of him, and Xiao Ran was behind him. Meng Tong did not dare to move at all when he was sandwiched by these 2 people. If he continued to fight, he would either continue to fight with Xiao Hongkai or skip Xiao Hongkai and directly find a newcomer with a higher ranking in the cave abode to plunder more points. However, no matter what the situation was, after the challenge, either Xiao Hongkai or Xiao Ran would definitely take advantage of the situation. If he stayed in the cave abode number 13 at the foot of the mountain, then Xiao Hongkai would not have the qualifications to take the initiative to challenge him. However, don't forget that Xiao Ran was blocking his way. When that time came, he would have to continue to fight with others, and the challenge points he could get in the end would be pitiful. Now in this challenge round, this idiot Lin Yi was trapped in his own trap. It was not easy for him to give Meng Tong a chance to overtake his points. If he continued to be entangled with these two underlings of Lin Yi, he would miss this golden opportunity. Chapter 3799. At the end of the day, the biggest problem that Meng Jiaguang and Meng Tong faced now was that Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai, who were originally just small fries under Lin Yi, had suddenly and inexplicably succeeded in building their foundations and became early-stage foundation building experts in one fell swoop. Originally, Lin Yi alone was enough to make them scratch their heads, but now, they realized that the situation had suddenly taken a turn for the worse. Not only could Meng Tong not defeat Lin Yi, he might not even be able to defeat any of Lin Yi's underlings. How could they continue to play? Although Meng Jiaguang had many newcomers under him, among the 12 newcomers, only Meng Tong was in the early stage of foundation building. On the other hand, although there were only 3 people in Lin Yi's group, all of them had succeeded in building their foundations. It was obvious who was strong and who was weak at a glance. Faced with such a huge disparity in strength, no matter how astute Meng Jiaguang was, it was useless. In the face of absolute strength, all the so-called plots and tricks were nothing but fleeting clouds. At this moment, Meng Jiaguang, the eldest senior brother who was always scheming and never showed his emotions on his face, could not help but suddenly feel a little flustered. Because he realized that if things continued like this, even if he had young Master Su's support and successfully sat on the position of Welcome Pavilion's 3rd pavilion head, he might not be able to do anything to Lin Yi and his group in the future. The performance of Lin Yi and his group of 3 was too eye-catching. Once they attracted the attention of the higher-ups of Blue Cloud Pavilion, it would be very difficult for him to obstruct them. If he was not careful, he would get into trouble instead, and it was not impossible for him to fail miserably in an easy task. Meng Jiaguang thought about it, and finally came up with the only effective solution, which was to find a way to upgrade Meng Tong to another level as soon as possible, so that he could once again have an overwhelming advantage over Xiao Ran, Xiao Hongkai, and even Lin Yi. Only then could he regain control of the situation. No matter how disrespectful Lin Yi and the others were to him, they were still rookies of Blue Cloud Pavilion who were heavily protected. If he didn't want to take the risk and rely on outsiders, the only way to deal with them was to support an even stronger rookie from Blue Cloud Pavilion to crush them. And this person could only be Meng Tong. Other newcomers such as Li Jingming. After all, he was only at Heaven's Stage Great Circle. Wanting to support him to a height that could crush Lin Yi and his group was obviously unrealistic. Furthermore, his loyalty was not as reliable as Meng Tong's. However, Meng Tong had just advanced to foundation building early stage not long ago, and he relied on the foundation building pill and foundation building liquid to successfully build his foundation. Wanting to raise him to another level in a short period of time, this difficulty could be imagined. Normal methods were definitely out of the question. The only way was to use medicinal pills, and it couldn't be ordinary medicinal pills that could assist in cultivation. Moreover, it had to be rare medicinal pills that could forcefully increase one's level, and it had to be the kind of medicinal pills that could be used to forcibly increase one's level. Other medicinal pills like the foundation breaking pill that were sought after by foundation building experts were useless. Unfortunately, if Meng Jiaguang had this kind of medicinal pill in his hands, he would have long given it to himself. How could he have kept it until today? However, even if Meng Jiaguang didn't have it in his hands, it didn't mean that he definitely couldn't get it. Don't forget that behind him stood Su Lingqiong, a great backer. With young Master Su's unfathomable background and influence, if he really had the heart to get this type of medicinal pill, it shouldn't be difficult. After all, raising Meng Tong's strength was to deal with Lin Yi. Moreover, Although young Master Su didn't put Meng Tong in his eyes, he was still considered a subordinate of his subordinate. But no matter what, he was still his subordinate's subordinate. Finding a way to raise Meng Tong's strength was killing two birds with one stone for young Master Su. After secretly making up his mind, Meng Jiuguang's heart felt a little more at ease. However, the gaze he looked at Lin Yi and the others with was unconsciously more gloomy and vicious than before. I'll let you be arrogant for now, and wait until I've convinced young Master Su. Then I'll deal with you. Feeling Meng Jiuguang's cold gaze, Lin Yi frowned slightly and said, "Could it be that Meng Jiuguang is up to something again?" As senior brother Ku Chong had already escorted Xiao Honkai back to the cave dwelling to recuperate, Lin Yi now only had Xiao Ran by his side. After all, with the powerful strength that Xiao Honkai had displayed now, and with Xiao Ran behind him to protect him, newcomers like Chao Wu wouldn't dare to provoke him. Therefore, even if he hadn't been challenged in this round, he could be sure that no one would come to challenge him. So, he simply returned to the cave dwelling to recuperate. Of course, if Meng Tong recovered in a short period of time, there was a possibility that he would directly launch a battle of revenge against Xiao Honkai. Unfortunately, this was unrealistic. With his current injuries, even if he consumed a level 4 recover pill, it would still take him a day to fully recover. Hearing Lin Yi's suspicions, Xiao Ran couldn't help but laugh. "Boss, you're thinking too much. In this situation, we have 3 early-stage foundation establishment experts, and he only has one subordinate, Meng Tong. This gap is too big. No matter how he plans, it's already useless." This was the truth. With Meng Jiuguang's strength, he could deal with Lin Yi and the others, but he couldn't do it himself. Moreover, he only had one powerful chess piece, Meng Tong. Using him to deal with Lin Yi and the others was simply unrealistic. After all, even the cleverest housewife can't cook without rice. Let's hope this guy will know his place. Lin Yi nodded. If Meng Jiuguang could recognize the reality and give up, then there wouldn't be so many troubles, and it would be convenient for him to focus on improving his strength in the future. Pausing, Lin Yi changed the topic and asked, "What's your plan? This round, are you going to be a bystander, or are you going to directly challenge for points?" Previously, Xiao Ran had maintained the status of bringing up the rear, purposely controlling the ranking of the cave behind Meng Tong, in order to ensure double insurance. This way, even if Xiao Honkai couldn't deal with Meng Tong, he could still take advantage of the situation to make up for it. At the same time, he could protect Xiao Honkai, who was ranked at the top of the cave, and at the same time, he could effectively restrict Meng Tong. However, after 2 rounds of losses on both sides, it had proven that Xiao Honkai had the ability and confidence to fight against Meng Tong. Therefore, Xiao Ran's double insurance was unnecessary and unnecessary. Instead of wasting time with Meng Tong, it was better to directly challenge for points. This way, it would be more reliable. However, Xiao Ran answered with a smile, "I will wait for another round. If I don't step on Meng Tong and let him go so easily, I will feel sorry for myself and Honkai." Based on the current ranking, Meng Tong's abode was the 13th abode at the foot of the mountain, while Xiao Ran's abode was the 14th abode at the foot of the mountain. Both of them happened to be right behind Meng Tong, and with the fact that they were enemies, even a kind person like Xiao Ran wouldn't let go of such an opportunity. Chapter 3800. Honest people also had a temper. Now that the tables had turned, how could Xiao Ran let Meng Tong go so easily? Therefore, even if he had to wait one more round, he wouldn't hesitate. Lin Yi heard this and laughed. "That's good too. I also want to see if our senior Meng can get another 4th realm Great Recover pill from Meng Tong. When that happens, Xiao Ran, you can go and cripple him. That scene will be very interesting." With Li Jingning, the inside man, the fact that Meng Tong consumed a 4th realm Great Recover pill couldn't be hidden from Lin Yi's eyes and ears. During the resistance assessment, Meng Tong had already used a 4th realm Great Recover pill. This time, to attack Xiao Honkai, he used another one. If he used another one and it didn't have the same effect, then Meng Jiuguang would probably cry. After all, A fourth realm Great Recover pill was a very rare life-saving pill. It was all spiritual jades. With Meng Jiuguang's own foundation, being able to get one was already his limit. The previous one was sponsored by young master Su Lingchong. Two of them smashed onto Meng Tong's body consecutively, and they didn't have any effect. This itself already made Meng Jiuguang want to cry. If he used another one and it didn't have any effect, then he would probably die from anger. 3 Fourth Realm Great Recover Pills. Many cultivators have never seen so many healing pills in their entire lives. Of course, it was still unknown whether Meng Jiuguang could get a third one for Meng Tong. With the previous two examples, the possibility was really not high. After the highlight of the fight between Xiao Hongkai and Meng Tong, the challenge returned to normal. The next development was slightly different from the previous round. It was finally the turn of another top 5 newcomers of Blue Cloud Pavilion, Li Jingming. After 3 rounds of waiting, he finally got the chance to be challenged. Li Jingming couldn't help but sigh. However, what really made him sigh wasn't because his ranking in the cave was too high. He didn't have the chance to fight and couldn't take the initiative to get challenge points from other newcomers. Instead, it was because he had to watch Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai succeed in breaking through to the Foundation Establishment realm. Looking at the so-called top 5 of Blue Cloud Pavilion, the other 4 had all succeeded in breaking through to the Foundation Establishment realm. And Lin Yi was already a hidden peak early-stage Foundation Establishment realm expert. Li Jingming was the only one left. He was still struggling at Heaven Stage Great Perfection, far from breaking through to the Foundation Establishment realm. This awkward situation was really painful. Looking at the methods the other 4 used to break through to the Foundation Establishment realm, Lin Yi didn't need to be mentioned. Meng Tong took a Foundation Establishment pill and a Foundation Establishment liquid. Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai each took a Foundation Establishment pill. However, Li Jingming didn't even get the most basic Foundation Establishment pill. Otherwise, as long as he could get a Foundation Establishment pill, with his talent, Li Jingming would have enough confidence to break through to the Foundation Establishment realm. He had enough confidence to succeed in breaking through to the Foundation Establishment realm like Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai. Unfortunately, he didn't have anything. At the end of the day, the biggest problem was that he latched onto the wrong thigh, Meng Jiuguang. Although he'd switched sides in the middle, secretly becoming a spy under Lin Yi's command, he still had to pay the price for his mistake. At first, he thought that by joining Meng Jiuguang, the eldest senior brother in charge, he would have the opportunity to fight for more cultivation resources. Even if he couldn't eat a lot of meat, he should at least be able to drink a few mouthfuls of meat soup. Now that he thought about it, Li Jingming was really blind. From the beginning to the end, not only did he not get any decent benefits, he was also repeatedly bullied by Meng Tong, that bastard. If his eyes were a little brighter back then and joined Lin Yi, he might have already succeeded in breaking through to the Foundation Establishment realm. Unfortunately, there were no ifs in this world. He could only taste the bitter fruit he sowed. Even if it was blood and tears, right now, Li Jingming could only silently endure it. He believed that as long as he played a good role as Lin Yi's spy, in the future, Lin Yi, the boss, would definitely not treat him badly. But then again, although Li Jingming had not succeeded in breaking through to the Foundation Establishment realm, and was overshadowed by the other top 5, with his strength, he still had enough of an advantage against the other newcomers of Blue Cloud Pavilion. The newcomer who challenged him was now in the 3rd cave at the foot of the mountain. In the previous rounds he had won 2 battles and fought his way up from the 5th cave at the foot of the mountain. It should be said that his strength was quite good. However, in this battle against Li Jingming, the gap was immediately reflected. From the beginning to the end, he was suppressed in every way. After a short period of 3 lights, he was blasted out of the ring. This battle was lost by Li Jingming's hands. It could be said that it was a clean loss, and he was sincerely convinced. Seeing Li Jingming's performance, the eyes of Lin Yi, who was watching the battle below the ring, suddenly lit up. He couldn't help but secretly think that it was time to find an opportunity to help Li Jingming get some benefits. Speaking of which, although Li Jingming had not been under his command for a long time, during this time as a spy, he was absolutely diligent and had secretly provided a lot of valuable information. Even if Lin Yi had planted Zhong Pingliang as a spy long ago, Zhong Pingliang was still in the soaring pavilion after all. At most, he could keep an eye on Kang Mingming, but he couldn't keep an eye on Meng Jueguang all the time. And right now, for Lin Yi, the biggest and most direct enemy was Meng Jueguang. During this period of time, Lin Yi was able to repeatedly see through Meng Jueguang's schemes in advance, and then deal with them calmly, causing the opponent to go for wool and come home shorn. In this, Li Jingming could be said to be the greatest credit. Kindness must be rewarded, and mistakes must be punished. Combining kindness and power was the best way to control subordinates. So, it was necessary for Lin Yi to help Li Jingming get some benefits. Otherwise, if this dragged on, this little brother of his would not be able to taste the sweetness. Who knew when he would become disloyal, and that would be a great loss. In Lin Yi's eyes, Li Jingming's development potential was far above Xiao Hongcai's, and even exceeded Xiao Ran's. Once he was cultivated well, he would definitely be a seedling that could take charge of an area in the future. For such a talent, as long as he could guarantee his loyalty, Lin Yi naturally wouldn't let him go to waste. At the end of the day, in the world of cultivation, the strong were always respected. The strong here did not just refer to strength, but more importantly, influence. No matter how strong one was, he couldn't achieve anything by himself. Only when his subordinates became strong together could he have a foothold in this cruel competition on Heavenly Island. Only then could he have enough right to speak and pave the way for what he wanted to do in the future. Chapter 3801. But if he were to see that Lin Yi's group was full of masters, then when Lin Yi went to see Zhang Liju with the identity of a big boss, he'd be able to ask him to do him a favor and save people. That'd be a lot easier. It was just that it was still wishful thinking to reach this level at the moment. But there was one thing that couldn't be wrong. Even if Lin Yi's strength didn't change, having a bunch of weak lackeys and a bunch of strong lackeys was two completely different things. This was something that Meng Jueguang had shown clearly. Back when he was in the common world, he was already invincible, and the importance of a strong follower wasn't that obvious. But now that he was in the Sky-class island, where Foundation practitioners were everywhere, he had to start from scratch. The meaning was completely different. Sky-class island, this name wasn't bad at all. Sky-class was the beginning of everything. Sky-class was basically the most common existence. And so, with just Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongcai, it wasn't enough. Li Jingming was a seed with potential, and as long as he could guarantee his loyalty, Lin Yi wouldn't be stingy with his benefits. Even if he made a recovery pill just for him, it wouldn't be impossible. After the fourth round of the competition ended, Lin Yi went back to treat Xiao Hongcai's injuries. After that, he infused qi into the 80 seeds in the jade space as usual. Other than the 80 seeds showing no signs of germination, everything went on as usual. However, he received a letter unexpectedly. There was no name on the letter, but the person who wrote it was Lin Yi, who was sure that it was his little sister whom he hadn't seen for a while, Shangguan Laner. The reason why he knew that it was Shangguan Laner was because of the person who sent the letter to Lin Yi. It was Laner's exclusive pet with intelligence, Little Curly Bear. Shangguan Laner was the only granddaughter of Soaring Sky Pavilion's pavilion master, Shanghai Tianhua. She was the well-deserved little princess of the three pavilions. Furthermore, his every move was being watched by everyone. At most, he would sneak out to play when no one was paying attention. Therefore, even if there was something important, he would not be able to do it. Shangguan Laner could not come to Lin Yi directly. That would be too conspicuous, and it would be easy for others to gossip. Moreover, it would also expose the pretense that she and Lin Yi deliberately pretended. This made Su Lingchong and the others suspicious. At this time, she could only place her hopes on the little curly bear. When there was no one around, he would send her a message. The little curly bear, who had always been playful, was obviously looking forward to this kind of mission. One had to know that Lin Yi was an absolute temptation to it, and it had accidentally come to Lin Yi's cave abode once before. He was quite familiar with it. However, even if the little curly bear's spiritual intelligence was super high, it would never have thought that Lin Yi had now changed his cave abode. In order to avoid people's attention, this guy came over when the sky was getting dark. He sneakily went to touch the enchantment of the 14th cave abode at the foot of the mountain. After waiting outside for a moment, it found that the person who came out was not Lin Yi at all. The little curly bear was suddenly dumbfounded. When it reacted, it was so scared that it ran away. Fortunately, the person who lived in the 14th cave abode at the foot of the mountain was not someone else, but Xiao Ran, who was with Lin Yi. Combined with the behavior of the little curly bear sticking to Lin Yi in the back mountain hall and refused to come down, Xiao Ran quickly realized that this little guy probably came to find his boss. Without saying anything, he immediately ran to the first cave abode at the foot of the mountain to find Lin Yi. Only then did he chase the little curly bear back halfway. Fortunately, the little guy's legs were short and could not run fast. Otherwise, it would have caused a lot of trouble if he let it run away in a panic now that it was already dark. Accompanying Lin Yi to chase the little curly bear back, looking at the little guy riding on Lin Yi's neck intimately, Xiao Ran couldn't help but feel strange. "Boss, didn't you say that the owner of this little guy doesn't get along with you? What happened to it?" Miss Shangguan hated Lin Yi. Under the influence of some people, this was almost a well-known thing in the Welcome Pavilion. Moreover, judging from the previous Shanghai laner's behavior of watching from the sidelines, it seemed that she really did not have a good impression of Lin Yi, which further confirmed the rumor. Lin Yi smiled slightly and said, "This is a kind of tacit understanding that I deliberately pretended to have with its owner to numb that young Master Su. Xiao Ran, it's good that you know this, but don't tell others." "Boss, don't worry, I understand." Xiao Ran suddenly understood, and then he was in awe. His boss Lin Yi could even make friends with such a high and noble person like Miss Shangguan, and could even make her take the initiative to act with him. He was really unfathomable. Taking the little curly bear back to his current number 1 cave house at the foot of the mountain, the little guy finally took out a small envelope from his little shorts. It could be seen that the envelope was originally very exquisite, but after it was taken out from the little guy's shorts, the design was wrinkled and did not dare to be complimentary. Although the little curly bear was a pet with intelligence, Shanghai Laner still specially designed a pair of shorts for it, in the name of preventing it from being exposed. Lin Yi did not know whether to laugh or cry as he opened the letter. The handwriting on it was beautiful and fresh, but there was one thing that made Lin Yi frown slightly. Shanghai Laner reported that recently, there was an inner disciple called Yuzha in Rising Sky Pavilion. He was looking around for people to inquire about the recent situation of Welcoming Pavilion, especially the strong newcomers who had recently risen. It was said that Nan Tianyong, the supervising deacon of Rising Sky Pavilion, who was also the sky's master, had previously gone to the Hong Chamber of Commerce to make a scene, but ended up being disgraced. After returning to Rising Sky Pavilion, he seemed to be helping to do the same thing, and the commotion was not small. Shanghai Lena was originally not interested in this kind of rumor, but when she heard the word, strong newcomer, she suddenly thought of Lin Yi. After all, if one were to talk about the most popular newcomer in Welcoming Pavilion, even if the newcomers from all 3 pavilions were put together, it would still be Lin Yi. After all, the previous 2 newcomer assessment rounds had consecutively obtained full marks, which was something that no other newcomer dared to imagine. Although the newcomers from the 3 pavilions were scored separately, the difficulty of the first 2 rounds of assessment was the same. Just based on this point, the other newcomers had no choice but to be convinced. Shanghai Laner speculated that this matter might have something to do with Lin Yi, so she sent the little curly bear over to inform him. Yuzha? Could it be the guy who snatched the star ink stone from her previously? Chapter 3802. Lin Yi was at least 99% sure that this Yuzha was the person who stole the star ink stone last time, and the powerful newcomer that the other was looking for was him. What made Lin Yi slightly confused was that he had only fought with this Yuzha after buying the star ink stone last time. Even if this guy could determine that he was someone from the Welcoming Pavilion from the route he took when he came back, how could he be so sure that he was a newcomer and not a steward of the welcoming pavilion? After all, when they fought, Lin Yi didn't hold back at all with his peak early-stage foundation establishment strength. If it was any normal person, they would probably think of the welcoming pavilion steward and not consider a newcomer, right? He read the contents of the letter once more, and saw the words Nan Tianyong, the supervising deacon of the soaring pavilion. He understood what was going on very quickly. The reason why the other side didn't ask about the welcoming pavilion stewards was probably because they knew the backgrounds of these new stewards, and even high-level people like Pavilion Master Hu Yufeng like the back of their hands, so they had already been eliminated beforehand. After eliminating all the possibilities that could be eliminated, there was only one possibility left. No matter how ridiculous and unbelievable it was often true and reliable. This Yuzha had suffered such a big loss last time, so it wasn't strange at all that he was looking for him all over the world for revenge. What made Lin Yi a bit surprised was that this guy actually pulled out Nan Tianyong, his master. If it was just Yuzha, even if Lin Yi was discovered, there was nothing to be afraid of. But if there was also Nan Tianyong, who he had never met before, and who was very likely to be very powerful, then this matter would be slightly more troublesome. Shanghai Laner's letter came very timely. If she hadn't tipped him off, Lin Yi wouldn't have been able to find out about these things in such a short amount of time. And if he allowed Yuzha and Nan Tianyong to limit their gaze to the newcomers of the welcoming pavilion and keep investigating like this, after a long time, it was very likely that something would happen. Even though when he was dealing with Yuzha, Lin Yi wore the 1,000 silk mask to be safe and moved around a second Lin from beginning to end. Even if Yuzha and Nan Tianyong were investigating the newcomers of the welcoming pavilion, they wouldn't be able to connect it to Lin Yi in a short amount of time. But, in the end, this matter still had risks. No matter how well Lin Er's identity was concealed, it was impossible for it to be flawless. If Yuzha and Nan Tianyong were to stare at him for too long, they would eventually find some clues. Once this fake identity was exposed, Lin Yi would be in big trouble. He had already made countless enemies in the welcome pavilion. Meng Jiuguang and Meng Tong were nearby, and Su Lingchong and Kang Ningning were far away. Even people like Pavilion Master Hu Yufeng were natural enemies. If Yuzha and Nan Tianyong, the supervising deacon of Soaring Sky Pavilion, were added to the mix, how could they continue to mingle in Yingxin Pavilion in the future? No matter how strong Lin Yi was. That was only relative to ordinary rookies. Lin Yi was also a little depressed to be targeted by so many powerful opponents with deep backgrounds. Lin Yi's principle was that he wasn't afraid of anything, but his main goal was to focus on cultivation. It wasn't a battle of wits and courage with this group of people. This was a real crisis. It seemed to be far away, but it was actually right in front of him. If he was a little careless, it could be a disaster in the next few days. After receiving the news from Shanghai Laner, Lin Yi's first reaction was that a long delay would bring trouble. He had to think of a way to divert the attention of these two people as soon as possible. However, how could he divert the attention of these two people? That was another problem. Lin Yi couldn't come into contact with them at the moment. Even if there was a chance to meet them face to face, according to normal people's logic, it would be better to avoid it as much as possible. It was impossible to jump out and meet them face to face. Otherwise, once they came into close contact, he might be discovered. Then he would be walking right into a trap. After all, when one's strength reached the middle stage of the foundation establishment stage, the sensitivity of one's perception was no small matter. However, if he didn't even have the chance to come into contact with them, what could he use to mislead them? This was obviously a paradox. I got it! Lin Yi thought for a moment, and his eyes suddenly lit up. With his current identity as Lin Yi, it really wasn't good to jump out and take the initiative to come into contact with Yuzha and Nan Tianyong. Even if he did come into contact with them, it wasn't realistic to divert their attention away from the welcoming pavilion. Since they had locked on to the welcoming pavilion, and locked on to the newcomers, they had already eliminated all other possibilities. Trying to mislead them from this angle was even more difficult. Moreover, If the traces of misdirection were too heavy, it would be easy to give them a handle. However, even if he couldn't divert their attention away from the welcoming pavilion, Linny still had a way to make himself disappear from their line of sight without leaving a trace. The reason was very simple. As long as he could find a way to get them to eliminate him from the list of suspects, then no matter how long they stared at the welcoming pavilion in the future, no matter how detailed their investigation was, they wouldn't be able to connect it to him. Because subconsciously, they had already labeled him as impossible. To achieve this, it wasn't difficult at all. He only needed to do one thing, and that was to get them to come and see him on their own accord before they narrowed down the list of suspects. From the looks of it, this idea was no different from courting death. However, the person who fought with Yuja was Lin Er, and today's Lin Yi was a completely different person. If they hadn't seen Lin Yi's face, Yuja and Nan Tianyong would have easily locked onto Lin Yi based on all the recent rumors about the welcoming pavilion. Once they matched Lin Yi and Lin Er, the final result would only become more and more similar until they could confirm that there was no mistake. This was because the target was too obvious. Although the Lin Er they were looking for was at the peak of the early stage of the foundational realm, and the welcoming pavilion's Lin Yi was only at the early stage of the foundational realm, as long as they put in the effort, it was completely possible to hide one's strength. What's more, during the resistance assessment, Lin Yi had taken a full blow from a peak of the early stage of the foundational realm, but he was able to recover in a short period of time. This could completely prove that he was at the peak of the early stage of the foundational realm. These were all the flaws that maintained the relationship between Lin Yi and Lin Er. Once they really matched Lin Yi's appearance with Lin Er's, they would inevitably think in the direction of disguise or a human skin mask even if they found out that Lin Yi looked different from Lin Er. In the end, there would still be a day when his identity would be exposed. Therefore, if they allowed Yuja and Nan Tianyong to continue investigating, it would be very dangerous for Lin Yi. Chapter 3803. Let them confirm that he was just a simple Lin Yi, and not the Lin Er they were looking for. Subconsciously, they would not think of him as the person they were looking for. Then, these so-called flaws on Lin Yi's body would be impossible to talk about. And the most direct and effective way to make the other party have a strong first impression was to find an opportunity to let Yuja and Nan Tianyong come over to take a look at him. Seeing is believing. Ordinary people believe in their eyes far more than their intuition. Even powerful cultivators would find it difficult to change this nature. Before Yuja and Nan Tianyong locked the suspicion on him, let them see his face that was completely different from Lin Er's. Once they took the initiative to cut off the connection between Lin Yi and Lin Er, then the crisis would naturally be solved. However, although this method was simple and effective, if Lin Yi took the initiative to find an opportunity to get close to them, it would be too deliberate and easy to make people suspicious. The best way was to use a third party to lead them to take the initiative to come over. Xiao Bai, wait here for a while. I will write a letter to your master. Help me bring it back later. Lin Yi thought for a moment, and comforted the little curly bear who was hanging on him. Then, he found a pen and ink and wrote a reply to Shangguan Laner. Yes, the third party that Lin Yi expected was his little senior sister, Shangguan Laner. Although Shangguan Laner was the well-deserved first lady of the three pavilions, with her pure and enthusiastic personality, once Lin Yi asked, she would be happy to help. However, Lin Yi did not think of asking her to take the initiative to find Yuja and Nan Tianyong. After all, her identity was too conspicuous. If she took the initiative to ask this kind of irrelevant gossip, it would be too unreasonable. So, even if he wanted her to help, he had to at least think of a reasonable explanation. He had to borrow the help of others. And around Shangguan Laner, there was such a natural candidate, Su Lingchong, eldest young Master Su. In the letter, Lin Yi described in detail how he needed Shangguan Laner's help. Only then did he fold the letter and pass it to little curly bear. Then, he went out and escorted the little curly bear back until he entered the inner core area of the soaring sky pavilion. Only then did he leave quietly. After returning to the cave residence at the foot of the mountain, Lin Yi returned to his normal pace as if nothing had happened. During the day, he still went to the Jade Spirit Hall to mine. At night, he infused his true chi into the 85 spiritual herb seeds. Apart from that, he meditated and cultivated. Previously, Linny had planned to go out and purchase some medicinal ingredients in the next few days to refine pills and gain some benefits for Li Jingning. But now, before he dealt with the potential danger of Yuzhe, it was inconvenient for Lin Yi to go out and do things as second Lin. Fortunately, Li Jingming wasn't in a hurry and let him wait a little longer. It was no big deal. On Lena's side, after receiving Lin Yi's reply, a faint smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. Humph. Looks like you owe this senior sister a favor again. However, she didn't have any hesitation and began to do as Lin Yi said. What she had to do was actually very simple. She just had to find a suitable opportunity to leak some information to Su Lingchong. This opportunity was not difficult to find. The second and third generation cultivators of the Soaring Sky Pavilion were naturally a small social circle. Every few days there would be various forms of gatherings. And with the powerful background of Laner, no matter where she went, she was an existence that people looked up to. If she wanted to join this kind of gathering, she didn't need to greet anyone. Her appearance would only make any host feel honored, and they would absolutely not dare to have any displeasure. This young lady rarely participated in the gathering of the second generation in the past. To be able to let her show her face, then in the circle of the second generation, it would be the capital to brag about in the future. However, although Laner rarely participated in these gatherings, if she wanted to find Su Lingchong, she would be able to find him at this kind of gathering. The second generation that could enter this circle, no matter which one of them, had an illustrious family background. Not to mention how many elite geniuses these second generation could produce, just based on their family background, it was already very worth to befriend and rope them in. For Su Lingchong, who was wholeheartedly studying to become the pillar of the Su family in the future, this kind of great opportunity in front of him, of course, would not let go of it. On the second day after receiving Lin Yi's reply, Laner appeared in Huayang Restaurant with the little curly bear. This was a luxurious consumption place specially opened by Soaring Sky Pavilion. A casual meal in this high-end place would cost hundreds of spiritual jades. The degree of luxury was not below any of the restaurants outside. It was the best choice for the gathering of the second-generation cultivators. Of course, cultivators generally did not need to eat, but the food here was also quite beneficial for cultivators. The vegetable dishes were basically cooked using precious spiritual herbs, and the meat dishes were specially raised from livestock that had absorbed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Not only was it incomparably delicious to eat, but after entering the body, it was also very beneficial for improving and consolidating one's strength. However, this was also not a place that ordinary loose cultivators and disciples with no background could afford to spend. It was just that this couldn't be compared, as people could increase their strength just by eating a meal. And as Shanghai Laner had expected, young Master Su Lingchong, was indeed not absent. Seeing the figure of Shanghai Laner, all the second-generation cultivators were suddenly collectively stunned. After a moment, they reacted, and one after another, they hurriedly surrounded her to greet her. Don't look at these second-generation cultivators, each and every one of them walking out with their mouths wide open, as if they were the only one in the world, but in front of a young lady like Shanghai Laner, they were not even fart. Who asked her to have such a valiant grandfather like Shanghai Tianhua? Even the elders of their families, in front of her grandfather, could only nod their heads and bow. In front of eldest Miss Shangguan, they could only naturally be a head shorter. And among the crowd, if one were to say that the one who fawned on Shanghai Laner the most was none other than Su Lingchong. Don't forget that this guy wholeheartedly wanted to become the grandson-in-law of Shanghai Tianhua. At this time, if he still did not know to seize the opportunity to fawn on her, then he was really stupid. Seeing so many second-generation young masters surrounding Shangguan Laner like lapdogs, one of the women in the banquet suddenly became unhappy. She sarcastically said, "Some women really don't understand the rules. Relying on the little background of their family, they bring a broken spiritual pet to wander around. This is Huayang residence, and anyone who casually enters and leaves is either rich or noble. Is this a place where a broken spiritual pet like you can come? Chapter 3804. What? What's wrong? Did I say anything wrong? Being stared at by everyone, the woman suddenly panicked. She didn't know Shanghai Laner, and there was no personal enmity between them. The reason why she said that was purely out of a moment of anger and jealousy. Before Shanghai Laner appeared, because she was the only woman present, and her appearance wasn't bad, it could be said that she was the moon surrounded by stars. Even Su Lingchong, the young master with a deep background, was quite fond of her. Unexpectedly, as soon as Shang Guanlan appeared, everyone threw her aside like a pair of worn-out shoes and ignored her. The difference was so great that she couldn't help but mock her. When Shanghai Laner heard this, she just glanced at the other party indifferently and snorted. Without saying anything more, she directly walked into the VIP room at the side. However, the little curly bear on her body swaggered at the woman for a while. Don't forget, although this little fellow was still in its infancy, the curly bear's race was naturally a high-level spiritual beast. Since young, it had a high spiritual intelligence, so it could completely understand what the woman said. Seeing Shanghai Laner walk into the VIP room with a disdainful look, the woman was suddenly stunned, and then became angry. However, before she could speak again, Su Lingchong's face had completely darkened. Who brought this woman here? Su Lingchong didn't even look at the woman's expression, and coldly swept his eyes over the group of second-generation young masters. Apart from Shanghai Laner, he, the young master, had the deepest background. At this time, when he opened his mouth, the other second-generation young masters could only listen. Young Master Su, it's me. A second-generation young master weakly raised his hand. This woman was a relative of a low-ranking elder in Soaring Sky Pavilion. Previously, she had been raised in her hometown because her strength was good. Recently, she was brought to Soaring Sky Pavilion, but she didn't expect that this kind of thing would happen the first time she came out to play. She didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. If she wanted to court death, no one could stop her. Bring her back. Tell her family about today's matter. Let them do as they see fit. Also, if any of you give her a good face in the future, you'll have to bear the consequences. Bear the consequences, Su Lingchong coldly said. To be honest, this woman was quite good-looking. Young Master Su's heart was moved when he first met her, but if he put this woman together with Miss Shangguan, that was not even a fart, so Su Lingchong naturally did not hesitate to step on it. As soon as he finished speaking, Su Lingchong turned around and entered the VIP private room, leaving behind a group of second-generation young masters looking at each other in dismay and a pale woman who realized that she was about to be in big trouble. Junior Sister Lana, that blind woman outside. I've already taught him a lesson for you. Come, drink some spirit tea that was just imported from Middle Island to calm down. Su Lingchong smiled apologetically and said, this kind of spirit tea was made by the tea master of Nakajima. Casually drinking it could clear the heart and concentrate the mind. Moreover, it was greatly beneficial for cultivation. It could make the true qi in the body more pure. The price of one tael was at least 100 spirit jades. Shanghai Laner took it, but before she could take a sip, it was immediately snatched away by the little curly bear. Like drinking water, it drank it in one gulp. After he finished, he also flashed his teacup at Su Lingchong, indicating for him to pour more. Su Lingchong's eyelids couldn't help but twitch violently, but for the sake of Shanghai Laner's face, he could only bite the bullet and pour more for the little curly bear. His heart was bleeding. What was a reckless waste of natural resources? This was an out-and-out reckless waste of natural resources. Shanghai Laner couldn't help but laugh when she saw Su Lingchong obviously feeling pained, yet forcefully putting on a generous appearance. She thought in her heart, this fellow really loves to put on an act and is hypocritical to the extreme. In comparison, my little junior brother Lin Yi is much more straightforward. After listening to Su Lingchong's idle chatter, Shangguan Laner opened her mouth and deliberately led the topic. That Lin Yi from the welcoming pavilion, how is he doing recently? Didn't you say that you were going to find someone to deal with him for me? Did junior sister Lana come this time to punish me? Although he was very happy to see Shangguan Laner and Lin Yi at each other's throats. But if he didn't see Lin Yi being unlucky for a long time, it would affect her impression of him as her senior brother. Then, the gains would not make up for the losses. Su Lingchong was shocked, and then he hurriedly patted his chest and promised. Junior sister Lana, don't worry. I've already found someone to specifically keep an eye on that kid. After we've figured out how strong he is, it'll be easy to find an opportunity to get rid of him. Speaking of which, Su Lingchong was quite ashamed when he said this. He was a dignified young master of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, but he had to go through so much trouble to deal with Lin Yi, who was just a newcomer in the secular world. This kind of thing was really shameful. Oh. Shangguan Laner nodded indifferently. She originally didn't come to instigate Su Lingchong to deal with Lin Yi. The reason why she mentioned Lin Yi was just as Lin Yi told her in the letter, to start a conversation and lead the topic to Yuzha and Nan Tianyong. After a short pause, Shangguan Laner said, Recently, I've heard rumors from the surrounding people that there are people in the Soaring Sky Pavilion asking about the newcomers in the Welcoming Pavilion. I wonder if senior brother Su has heard of it? Junior sister Laner, could it be the pair of master and disciple, Nan Tianyong and Yuzha? Su Lingchong was the young master of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. As long as there was any movement in the Soaring Sky Pavilion, it was impossible to escape his ears. Naturally, he knew this kind of thing like the back of his hand. It seems to be the name. I've only heard it mentioned by others. I just feel that the strong newcomer in the Welcoming Pavilion might be related to Lin Yi. I've often heard people say that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. If it's inconvenient for senior brother Su to directly deal with Lin Yi, why don't you contact these two people? Maybe you'll have an unexpected harvest? Shangguan Laner pretended to be careless and suggested. Su Lingchong was stunned when he heard this, and then his eyes lit up. That's right. Junior sister Lana is really smart. If you didn't remind me, I wouldn't have thought of this. This was not a lie. If it wasn't for Shangguan Laner's guidance, Su Lingchong would have ignored this kind of rumor. He wouldn't have associated it with Lin Yi for a while, and he wouldn't have thought of joining forces with people like Yuzha. Although Yuzha was also an inner court disciple of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, because of his ordinary background, they were not on the same level. Therefore, he couldn't enter Su Lingchong's eyes at all. Chapter 3805. However, although Su Lingchong did not intend to make friends with this master and disciple, if it was really as Shanghai Laner said, that the powerful newcomer of the Welcome Pavilion that these two people were looking for was really Lin Yi, he might as well make use of it. With this master and disciple's attitude of inquiring all over the world, the only possibility was that this person was an irreconcilable enemy. At that time, if they could really confirm that it was Lin Yi, then young Master Su didn't need to worry about it. These two people would rush to deal with Lin Yi. It was easy to kill with a borrowed knife. Why not? More importantly, this was a rare request from Shanghai Laner. Not to mention that this matter was beneficial to Su Lingchong, even if there were no benefits. In order to please this junior sister Laner, he would definitely agree, and it was impossible to reject the other party's face. After figuring out the key points, Su Lingchong immediately said to Shangguan Laner, I'll talk to them in the next 2 days, and then we'll go to the Welcoming Pavilion together to see if the person they're looking for is Lin Yi. If little junior sister Laner has nothing to do, why don't we watch the fun together? Okay. Shanghai Laner agreed without hesitation. In this letter that Lin Yi replied to her, he did not specify the cause and effect, nor did he mention his identity as another Lin Yi. He just asked her to do a favor according to the letter, so Shanghai Laner also wanted to see what Lin Yi was planning this time. Another good opportunity to cultivate a relationship with junior sister Laner. Su Lingchong was overjoyed when he saw this. However, when he turned his head and saw what the little curly bear did next to him, his face collapsed in an instant. He wanted to cry but had no tears. It turned out that while the two of them were talking, the little curly bear next to them was not idle at all. He actually secretly drank the 2 pots of spiritual tea prepared on the table. These 2 pots of spiritual tea. The price was 500 spiritual jades. In other words, in such a short time, the little fellow helped this young Master Su squander 500 spiritual jades. No matter how powerful his family background was, he couldn't afford such squandering. Then, I'll take my leave first. Shangguan Laner didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She had to drag the little curly bear away, otherwise she would have to stay here. She was afraid that Su Lingchong would lose his rationality and fly off the handle on the little fellow. Time passed by in a flash, and the 5th round of the newcomer challenge began as usual. All the rookies had gathered by the side of their respective arenas, waiting for the challenge to begin. However, the difference between this round and the previous 4 rounds was that on the side of the Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomers, there were a few uninvited guests. It was Su Lingchong and his group. All the newcomers immediately started discussing, because this time, other than Su Lingchong and Shangguan Laner, there was another unfamiliar face, and from his attire, he was undoubtedly an inner court disciple of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. As expected, it was this fellow. The moment he saw Yuzha appear behind Su Lingchong, Lin Yi's eyelids couldn't help but twitch. This time, it was all thanks to Shanghai Laner's information, and also thanks to his timely reaction. Otherwise, if he allowed this guy to continue investigating, it would be really dangerous. Young Master Su, I've been looking forward to your arrival. When Meng Jiuguang saw Hu Yufeng accompanying Su Lingchong over, he hurriedly went over and greeted them with a fawning expression. Su Lingchong nodded to him, and then introduced both parties. This is our Soaring Sky Pavilion's Yuzha, and this is the Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomer manager Meng Jiuguang that I mentioned to you on the way here. You two get to know each other. This time, only Yuzha came over with Su Lingchong. His master Nan Tianyong originally wanted to come, but because he had a mission midway, he was transferred by the Law Enforcement Hall to cooperate with them, so he could only put it on hold. Oh, so it's senior brother Yu. It's an honor to meet you. Meng Jiuguang didn't know what was going on, and thought that Yuzha was Su Lingchong's underling. Moreover, Yuzha saw that Yuzha's strength was above his, so he hurriedly tried to curry favor with him. Yuzha couldn't help but want to roll his eyes. I've been hiding in the library pavilion for 3 years, and even the inner disciples of Soaring Sky Pavilion might not have heard of me. This Meng Jiuguang, a newcomer manager of Welcoming Pavilion who had nothing to do with me, actually opened his mouth and said that it's an honor to meet you. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. However, these were all polite words, so Yuzha naturally wouldn't expose him. He immediately replied, Not at all, not at all. Brother Meng is young Master Su's favorite, so I should be the one saying that it's an honor to meet you. Hearing this, Meng Jiuguang was instantly secretly pleased. He thought that this Yuzha really knew how to talk. Being young Master Su's favorite, this was the direction that he would work hard towards in the future. As long as he firmly held on to young Master Su's thick thigh, it would not be difficult for him to achieve meteoric success. The two of them exchanged greetings for a while. Seeing that the newcomer challenge was about to begin, Su Lingchong coughed lightly and interrupted them. All right, the two of you don't have to be so courteous. Let's get down to business. Yuzha nodded and cut to the chase. Brother Meng, I heard that your Blue Cloud Pavilion has a newcomer with the surname Lin. His strength is especially outstanding. I wonder if he's here today? Can you point him out to me? A newcomer with the surname Lin? His strength is especially outstanding? Meng Jiuguang frowned. Without a doubt, this was referring to Lin Yi. However, why was this Yuzha asking about Lin Yi? Although he was puzzled, Meng Jiuguang still immediately pointed him out. There, that's Lin Yi. His strength is only SOSO among the newcomers, but he likes to show off and brag about his strength. He doesn't have much popularity, and his intelligence is a bit problematic. Meng Jiuguang thought that something good was about to befall the strongest rookie, so he directly beat up Lin Yi and planned on pushing Meng Tong out. Following the direction that Meng Jiuguang was pointing, Yuzha sized up Lin Yi from afar. His figure was quite similar to the second Lin in his impression. However, when he carefully looked at Lin Yi's face, He immediately determined that this Lin Yi was a completely different person from the second Lin he was looking for. They looked completely different. Yuzha looked for a long time before finally shaking his head at Su Lingchong and company. He said in disappointment, "Although this person's figure looks similar, his appearance is completely different. He's not the person I'm looking for." "Are you sure? Take a closer look." "Could you have seen wrongly?" Su Lingchong said with a frown. He couldn't wait for Lin Yi to turn out to be the Lin heir that this guy was looking for. That way, he'd have another fighter to deal with Lin Yi, and it'd save him the trouble of worrying about small things like this. However, in terms of urgency, Su Lingchong could not compare to Zhe, the person involved. Chapter 3806. Yuzha smiled bitterly and shook his head. "Young Master Su, this person looks completely different from that Lin second. You can tell with one glance." Actually, it wasn't just their looks that were completely different. That Lin second gave Yuzha the impression that he was a very cunning and troublesome guy. He wasn't like Meng Jiuguang, who liked to brag and create hype, and had problems with his intelligence. He sounded like two completely different people. It was only because of Su Lingchong's face that Yuzha couldn't just leave like that after spending so much effort to come all the way to the welcoming pavilion. From his point of view, even if this Lin Yi wasn't the Lin heir he was looking for, he couldn't rule out the possibility of other newbies. "Brother Meng, the newcomer I'm looking for, other than having outstanding strength, should have a lot of spirit jades on hand. At least a few hundred spirit jades shouldn't be a problem. I wonder if this Lin Yi or the other newcomers fit this condition?" Yuzha changed the subject. He didn't plan on talking about what happened that day in detail because it involved the Star Ink Stone and Supreme Grade Foundation barrier-breaking pill. If he said it in front of Su Lingchong and the others, then even if he could successfully pull out Lin second, he probably wouldn't have anything to do with it. Yuzha didn't mind being a hired thug for a young master like Su Lingchong, but when it came to these great treasures, then there was nothing to say. In reality, let alone this eldest young master Su, who he didn't have much of a relationship with, Yuzha and even his own master, Nan Tianyong, had never mentioned the matter of the Star Ink Stone or the top-grade Foundation establishment barrier-breaking pill. In front of benefits, not caring about family was the true nature of a cultivator. A few hundred spirit jades? That's impossible. Lin Yi is just a pauper. Never mind a few hundred, it's already good enough that he could take out one. As for the other newcomers, although they don't have a few hundred, they're definitely much better than a pauper like Lin Yi. Meng Jiuguang flatly denied it. Until now. He thought that Yuzha had come to find someone for something good, so he kept belittling Lin Yi. But what he said wasn't false. At least in the eyes of others, including him, Lin Yi really couldn't have any spirit jades on him. As long as he could get his hands on a few pieces of good jade. They were immediately swapped with scrapped jades by the Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomers. With the ferocity of the Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomers, they would be able to leave a good piece of jade for Lin Yi. That was already a great mercy. As for a few hundred spiritual jades, this was simply impossible. There might not even be a few hundred pieces of useless jade. What's more, a scrap jade could only fool an idiot like Lin Yi. If he used it outside, it would be impossible to get away with it. Once discovered, he would be beaten to death on the spot. Hearing Meng Jiuguang's words, Yuzha immediately eliminated the possibility of Lin Yi. After all, other than a slight resemblance to Meng Jiuguang in terms of physique, everything else, be it in terms of appearance, style of doing things, or Ling Yu's family background, he was a completely different person from the Lin heir he knew. There was no connection between the two. Seeing Yuzha's somewhat disappointed expression, Meng Jiuguang couldn't help but ask, "Senior brother Yu, why are you spending so much effort to find this newcomer? I don't dare to boast about anything else, but I know every single newcomer in Blue Cloud Pavilion like the back of my hand. Why don't you tell me the specifics? Maybe I can help you look for one." His intention in saying this was to see if he could gain any benefits from this. If he could also push Meng Tong out. Yuzha was originally disappointed, but hearing Meng Jiuguang's words, his eyes immediately lit up. In welcoming pavilion, Meng Jiaguang was an out-and-out local snake. When it came to understanding the newcomers in welcoming pavilion, he was far above people like eldest young Master Su and Pavilion Master Hu Yunfeng. If he wanted to find someone, it would be a piece of cake. It would naturally be best if he could help. Then many thanks for Brother Meng's good intentions. The person I'm looking for is called Lin Er. Of course, this is most likely an alias. As for the conditions, it's what I just told you. I won't hide it from you, Brother Meng. This person is my irreconcilable mortal enemy. I almost died at his hands a while ago. I must avenge this enmity, so I'll have to trouble Brother Meng to help me. Yuja pleaded with a sincere expression. F***ck. When Meng Jiaguang heard this, he really wanted to slap himself. After beating around the bush for so long, he didn't get any so-called benefits. It turned out that the person this guy was looking for was his mortal enemy. He was so focused on belittling Lin Yi, and even wanted Meng Tong to replace him. Now that he thought about it, didn't his words turn out to be a great help to Lin Yi and help him clear his suspicions? If he had known earlier, he would have inverted the truth and tried his best to lure Lin Yi. Who cared if Lin Yi was the Lin Er that this guy was looking for? First, he would have sowed discord and killed the suspicion on Lin Yi. When the time came, he would have made a great enemy for Lin Yi for no reason. Wouldn't that be great? Such a great opportunity was wasted by him. Instead, he carelessly helped Lin Yi block a calamity. This was F***king cheap. However, the words had already been said. No matter how much Meng Jiaguang regretted it, he couldn't change his words. He could only vaguely nod his head and give a perfunctory reply. Young Master Su, Pavilion Master Hu, I still want to take a look at the other two pavilions' newcomer arenas. Is that possible? Yuja turned his head and asked Su Lingchong. Since he couldn't find the person he was looking for in the Blue Cloud Pavilion, then he would turn around and take a look at the Soaring Sky Pavilion and the Mysterious Pavilion. This was a very normal logic. Moreover, the strength of the newcomers in the two pavilions was definitely higher than the Blue Cloud Pavilion. The possibility of Lin Er being mixed in there was also much higher than in the Blue Cloud Pavilion. However, this was the Welcoming Pavilion's territory. Under normal circumstances, outsiders like him were not allowed to casually wander around. Of course, as long as Su Lingchong and Hu Yunfeng nodded their heads, there would naturally be no problem. Go ahead. Su Lingchong impatiently waved his hand and signaled Hu Yunfeng to accompany him. Although he didn't achieve his goal of getting someone else to do his dirty work, this guy was still an inner disciple of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. His attitude towards young Master Su was also very respectful. He could barely be considered half one of his own, so it wasn't a big deal to do him a favor. Seeing Yuja and Hu Yunfeng leave, the corner of Lin Yi's mouth couldn't help but curve up. As he expected, this move of first impressing others worked. Although the location was slightly far, Lin Yi couldn't hear what Yuja and the others were talking about. However, he was still able to hear a few bits and pieces and roughly understand the situation. Chapter 3807. Of course, Meng Jiaguang didn't realize this. Now that he realized it, he was probably regretting it so much that his intestines would turn green. What was called being too smart for one's own good? This was how people like Meng Jiaguang, who thought he was always smart, thought so highly of himself. After Yuja, the uninvited guest, left, he was a little puzzled. Lin 1, Lin 2, their names were similar. Logically speaking, they should be the same person. Could it be that those people heard wrong? Not many people knew Lin 2's name, but when he was selling the spirit beasts, it was heard by some people. Now that Yuja found out about it, it was reasonable for there to be a mistake. The 5th round of the Blue Cloud Pavilion Newcomer Challenge officially began. This time was different from the past. Eldest Miss Shangguan and eldest young Master Su were watching from the sidelines. Any normal person would want to be in the limelight and leave a good impression on these two people. It should be known that if one of these two people took a liking to them and took them in as a follower, their future would be meteoric. With such thoughts, in addition to the grudges accumulated from the previous 4 rounds, today's rookie challenge could be said to be filled with the smell of gunpowder from the beginning to the end. It was an exciting match. As usual, the first battle to begin was still the highlight of the top 5. Xiao Ran from the 14th abode at the foot of the mountain challenged Meng Tong from the 13th abode at the foot of the mountain. After hearing Xiao Ran call out his name, Meng Tong's face fell. He exchanged glances with Meng Jueguang, who also had a helpless expression. In the end, he braced himself and walked onto the stage with heavy steps. This was different from the previous round. In the previous round, in order to trick Xiao Hongkai, Meng Tong took a 4th-rank Great Recovery pill and healed, but he still pretended to be injured. However, in this round, Meng Tong wasn't so lucky as to obtain a 3rd grade 4 Great Cyclic pill from Meng Jueguang. Thus, he was currently seriously injured and had yet to fully recover. However, in order to frighten Xiao Ran, he could only forcefully feign a fully recovered appearance in front of everyone. Unfortunately, things didn't go according to one's wishes. Xiao Ran didn't care at all. He didn't hesitate to issue a challenge right from the start. Meng Tong, what is this fellow dilly-dallying for? Isn't this Xiao Ran Lin Yi's little brother? Isn't it good to take advantage of this opportunity to deal with him? Su Lingchong looked at Meng Tong's cowardly behavior and couldn't help but frown. Although Meng Tong wasn't worthy of young Master Su's attention, he was still Meng Jueguang's underling, and could be considered as one of his subordinates. But now, he was even cowering in front of Xiao Ran, a mere underling of Lin Yi's. It was simply improper. Because he hadn't been to the Welcome Pavilion recently, and because he didn't care about a small fry like Xiao Ran, Su Lingchong didn't carefully observe Xiao Ran's strength. He didn't know that Xiao Ran was already an early-stage Foundation Establishment Realm expert. Young Master Su didn't know that Meng Tong was an early-stage Foundation Establishment Realm expert, but he was already so weak that he had been injured twice in a row. Now, he was fighting with a body full of serious injuries. With his current state, not to mention facing Xiao Ran, an expert of the same level, even if Chao Wu, who was publicly recognized as weak, went up against him, he could easily beat him to his knees. Meng Jueguang heard this and immediately felt awkward. He couldn't say a word for a long time, and he was speechless. You have to know. Su Lingchong had high hopes for him. Recently, he had already begun to build up support for him in the upper echelons of the 3 pavilions, paving the way for him to take over as the 3rd pavilion master of the Welcome Pavilion. If he told him at this time that not only did he fail to deal with Lin Yi, but he was also continuously slapped in the face by 2 of Lin Yi's underlings, how could he continue to mingle in front of young Master Su? Just as Meng Jueguang didn't know how to explain it to young Master Su, under the referee's announcement, the duel on the stage had already officially begun. But this was a duel between 2 early-stage Foundation Establishment Realm experts. However, it ended rather quickly. Because with Meng Tong's current state, he didn't dare to make a move against Xiao Ran. After all, their positions were naturally hostile, and they had an unpleasant experience in the first round. He was afraid that Xiao Ran would take the opportunity to take revenge, or even directly kill him. So before the referee's voice fell, he still hurriedly raised his hand and shouted, "I admit defeat! I admit defeat!" The audience immediately went into an uproar. A familiar situation had already happened in the first round. At that time, it was also him and Xiao Ran, but the one who took the initiative to admit defeat was Xiao Ran. But now, only a short period of 4 rounds had passed, and the situation was completely reversed. What kind of ironic retribution was this? For Xiao Ran, this match could be said to be exhilarating. He forced Meng Tong, the so-called boss of the newcomers in Blue Cloud Pavilion, to take the initiative to admit defeat. This was something that no one had ever done before, and he had thoroughly vented the resentment of the first round. However, for Meng Tong, this time, he didn't feel so good. Clearly, a few rounds ago, this guy could only cower, and didn't even have the courage to face him. Now, in the blink of an eye, he was riding on top of his head, and even forced to take the initiative to admit defeat. Who could understand this kind of depression to the point of death? More importantly, in this round, young Master Su happened to be present. This was his backer's backer. This wasn't just shameful, it was practically killing him. And just when the audience was in an uproar, young Master Su, who was watching the match, heard Meng Tong's words, and his face instantly turned as black as the bottom of a pot. Meng Jiuguang, who was beside him, couldn't help but cover his face. Although Meng Jiuguang knew that this time, Meng Tong was forced to make this choice, young Master Su didn't know the whole story. To be honest, although he brought Yuzhe here for other matters, he was also looking forward to seeing Lin Yi and his gang's misfortune. After all, he also brought along Shanghai Laner, the young lady who was nominally displeased with Lin Yi. Along the way, she swore that she would definitely make Lin Yi unlucky. And from the perspective of the newcomer challenge, it was just right. After all, even if they didn't see the boss, Lin Yi, being unlucky, seeing his underlings being crushed by Meng Tong was also a kind of pleasure for them. In the end, this guy, Meng Tong, didn't do anything on the stage. As soon as he came up, he directly admitted defeat without saying a word. This was F*King giving young Master Su a slap in the face in front of everyone, and it was a slap that shook the heavens. Looking at young Master Su's gloomy face for a long time without saying a word, with an expression that looked like he wanted to kill someone, Shanghai Laner, who was beside him, couldn't help but grin and hold back her laughter. Chapter 3808. Young Master Su, Old Meng, have lost face because of my incompetence. But can you listen to my explanation? I have my own difficulties. Looking at young Master Su's gloomy expression, Meng Jiuguang hurriedly pleaded for leniency. He was afraid that Su Lingchong would leave in a fit of rage and put him on the blacklist. If that happened, there would be no hope for him at all. Even the position of the third pavilion master of the welcome pavilion that he was about to obtain would become a wasted effort. Su Lingchong was silent for a while with a gloomy face. He glanced at Meng Tong, who was trembling with fear and almost peeing his pants. He then turned his head and said in a deep voice, "Speak, I'm listening." Yes, young Master Su, you may not know, but recently, Lin Yi's underlings, Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai, both succeeded in building their foundations for some unknown reason. Meng Jiuguang carefully explained. And? There's such a thing? Su Lingchong originally thought that Meng Jiuguang would find some excuse to brush him off, but he didn't expect such a shocking piece of news. For a newcomer, wanting to build his foundation in such a short period of time was easier said than done. It must be known that the reason why Kong Mingming and the others were able to successfully build their foundation so early was entirely because of him. Otherwise, if they didn't have the foundation elixir along with the foundation elixir, they wouldn't even have the courage to try. On the other hand, Lin Yi's group, on the other hand, couldn't even get one for each of them, let alone a foundation elixir. Plus, the mountain behind them was filled with poor people like Lu Bianren, and there was no way for them to get any elixirs at all. Since that was the case, how could they succeed in building their foundation? If this happened to Lin Yi was just a special case, then now even the two underlings, Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai, had succeeded in building their foundation. This was really confusing. Su Lingchong was confused, so he could only continue to listen to Meng Jiuguang patiently. Meng Jiuguang obviously couldn't give any reasonable explanation, so he could only tell young Master Su everything that happened in these few rounds in detail. Regarding these things, Shanghai Laner and Little Curly Bear also listened with great interest. Although Lin Yi didn't personally participate in these things, but listening to Lin Yi's underlings and Meng Tong's battle of wits and courage was actually quite interesting. Strictly speaking, Lin Yi was Shangguan Laner's junior, so Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai could naturally be considered as the underlings of Miss Shangguan's underlings, and Meng Tong was the underling of Su Lingchong, this annoying underling. Then, wasn't these things that Meng Jiuguang said equivalent to the invisible confrontation between her and Su Lingchong? One must know. The degree of Shanghai Laner's hatred for Su Lingchong, this hypocritical young master, was not a little bit. Over the years, she had been annoyed by this annoying person, but because of the relationship between their elders, she couldn't completely ignore it. Over time, she accumulated a lot of resentment. So, at this moment, listening to these things, there was no need to mention how great it was to vent her anger. Just as Meng Jiaguang was racking his brains to explain to young Master Su, on the contrary, Lin Yi's group looked relaxed at the moment, talking and laughing wittily. Meng Tong took the initiative to surrender as soon as he came up. Although this result was somewhat out of their expectations, it was also reasonable. After all, the 4th grade recover pill was not an ordinary pill that could be found on the street. Previously, Meng Jiaguang was able to get 2 pills for him was already the limit. If they were to smash Meng Tong's body like a bottomless pit, not to mention that Meng Jiaguang couldn't bear it, even Su Lingcheng, a young master with a deep background, might not be willing to grit his teeth and spend such a big capital. Hee hee. Boss, you see, Meng Jiaguang and Meng Tong, these 2 idiots, are always swaggering around in front of us. But now that Su Lingcheng came, they immediately shrunk back. Look at the 2 of them, they don't even dare to breathe loudly. They are so F***king scared. Xiao Hongkai laughed and gloated. Linny couldn't help but laugh and said, Hee hee, who asked them to make trouble for young Master Su the moment they came up? It's rare to come to the welcoming pavilion, but in the end, they saw Meng Tong surrender to our Xiao Ran. If I were him, I'm afraid that I would also be depressed. Of course, this little bit of anger can only be released on Meng Jiaguang's little brothers. The bitter senior and Xiao Ran looked at each other and laughed. It was rare to see Meng Jiaguang and Meng Tong being defeated like this. Even if they were honest and kind people, they couldn't help but feel refreshed and satisfied. Hee hee, it's a pity that Meng Tong is probably scared out of his wits. I was originally waiting for him to challenge me and then fight to the death with him to see whether his 1,000 legs or my cold iron palm is stronger. Unfortunately, I'm afraid I won't be able to wait for this opportunity today. After a few jokes, Xiao Hongkai shook her head with a regretful expression. Lin Yi heard her words and couldn't help but laugh. He shook his head and said, Forget it. You should hurry up and challenge to earn points. This is what you should do now. As for dealing with Meng Tong, I promise you that there will be more opportunities like this in the future. All right, I'll listen to you, boss. Xiao Hongkai nodded. Then, under everyone's gaze, he turned around and walked into the ring. As one of the 4 great early-stage foundational stage experts in Blue Cloud Pavilion, and having fought 2 consecutive rounds with Meng Tong, Xiao Hongkai had completely taken off the title of trash. He was no longer just a lackey under Lin Yi, but a real man of the moment. Now, in Blue Cloud Pavilion, no one dared to look down on him. On the contrary, when they thought of this guy's fierce performance in fighting 2 rounds with Meng Tong, everyone couldn't help but feel their scalp tingle. They didn't even dare to look him in the eye, afraid that he would misunderstand it as a provocation and target them. If that happened, even if they wanted to cry, they wouldn't be able to. According to the principle of maximizing points, Xiao Hongcai's next challenge was naturally to challenge the cave number 11 at the foot of the mountain, which was ranked above him. There was no suspense in the outcome of this battle. Finishing the battle in one move, Xiao Hongkai easily obtained his points. Then, under everyone's respectful gazes, he calmly walked off the stage. Looking at such a disgusting scene and listening to the nonsense Meng Jiaguang said, young Master Su's expression was completely dark. He never thought that in the short period of time he didn't pay attention to this place, so many unforeseen events had happened. Moreover, they were unforeseen events that made him lose face. Chapter 3809. Although strictly speaking, these matters couldn't be blamed on him being useless. No one could have expected that Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai, these 2 small fries, would actually be able to counterattack and succeed in building their foundations at the same time. But in the end, he could only blame himself for not doing his job well. As a dignified steward senior brother, he couldn't even deal with 2 small fries under Lin Yi. This was a fact that couldn't be covered up no matter how he tried to find an excuse. Meng Jiaguang felt ashamed and flustered, and didn't dare to find any excuse to shirk the responsibility in front of young Master Su. Based on Meng Jiaguang's many years of experience, The best way to deal with this situation was to pretend to be sincere and ashamed and prepared to be scolded. There was no need to say anything else, because anything else would be superfluous. This young Master Su in front of him was truly a smart person. Any action of shirking responsibility in front of him was a stupid act of thinking oneself clever. The more one spoke, the more wrong one would be. It was better to put on a good attitude, and at least leave a good impression of being pragmatic. Sure enough, after a moment of silence, Su Lingchong opened his mouth and said, "All right, I roughly understand the situation. This matter can't be blamed on you, old Meng. After all, the other side's two small fries suddenly succeeded in building their foundations. This kind of thing is unexpected. Furthermore, it's normal for just one Meng Tong to be unable to handle it. You don't need to blame yourself too much." After all, Su Lingchong wasn't an ordinary hedonistic young master. His shrewdness and tolerance were far beyond that of ordinary people. Once a person like Meng Jiaguang entered his eyes, as long as he didn't make a mistake on the crucial issue of loyalty, he could completely tolerate this kind of small mistake. Because only by doing this could he create an image of being open-minded and open-minded. In the future there would also be more people who would rely on him, and willingly sell their lives for him. Moreover, this time, Meng Jiaguang could indeed be considered pardonable. If he, Su Lingchong, didn't let it go, then it would seem like he had no tolerance. Not only would it not help the situation, it would also easily ruin his reputation. The loss outweighed the gain. "Thank you for your understanding, young Master Su. Old Meng, I won't say any more hypocritical words of flattery. Young Master Su, please watch my performance in the future. I will do my best and not disappoint young Master Su," Meng Jiaguang said with a face full of gratitude. Su Lingchong obviously enjoyed this very much. It was rare for him to put down his status, and he reached out to pat Meng Jiaguang's shoulder. "All right, old Meng, this young master has seen your loyalty. Work hard in the future, and this young master will absolutely not treat you unfairly." Looking at the master and servant duo's performance, Shanghai Laner couldn't help but secretly curl her lips. Even if she was inexperienced, she could still feel the artificiality in this. Indeed, birds of a feather flock together. These people are really hypocritical to the extreme. They can't be compared to my little junior brother Lin Yi. Little did they know that this was Su Lingchong deliberately pulling Meng Jiaguang to put on a show. His vision was not limited to the mere welcome pavilion Lin Yi. He did this completely to create an image of himself as a wise young master. He wanted to spread his reputation through the mouths of the people present, and pave the way for him to take over the Su family in the future. The master and the servant acted for a long time. Seeing that the audience was already talking about it, it seemed that the effect was almost there. Only then did they stop with satisfaction. "Speaking of which, in this situation, old Meng, what do you think we should do? We can't let Lin Yi and his lackeys be so arrogant and presumptuous, right? Otherwise, if this goes on, where will I put my face?" "Where would I put my face then?" Su Lingchong opened his mouth to ask. Although he himself was a smart person, his focus had always been on the top, and he would not waste too much energy on a small figure like Lin Yi. If he had to do everything by himself, then what was the point of having a subordinate like Meng Jiaguang? Young Master Su felt that what he had to do as the master was to be Meng Jiaguang's backing, help him solve some things that he couldn't solve, and then let Meng Jiaguang do it. To deal with a small figure like Lin Yi, Meng Jiaguang was completely enough. Meng Jiaguang had been waiting for Su Lingchong's words for a long time. Hearing this, he immediately replied, "Young Master Su, in the current situation, although Lin Yi and the others are a bit too big to get rid of, in my opinion, the way to deal with them is actually very simple. As long as we take back the initiative in terms of strength, all other problems will naturally be solved." "Oh? Old Meng, how do you want to take back the initiative?" Su Lingchong frowned slightly. Of course, he knew that the strength that Meng Jiaguang mentioned here referred to the strength of the newcomers under him. After all, if he didn't want to take risks, he could only deal with Lin Yi and the others through this group of newcomers. Lin Yi and the others were now already in the early stage of foundation establishment. On the other hand, among the newcomers under Meng Jiaguang, there was only Meng Tong. In comparison, it seemed too weak. However, if he wanted the other newcomers under Meng Jiaguang to break through to the foundation establishment stage as soon as possible, not to mention that it would require a lot of medicinal pills and resources, the key was that with so many resources invested, there might not be any results. This was because even Meng Jiaguang, the big senior brother in charge, could not guarantee the loyalty of so many newcomers. Moreover, it was unknown how many of these newcomers could successfully break through. At that time, when they faced Lin Yi and the others, they might not be able to gain an advantage, and the effect would not be great. Meng Jiaguang had already considered this, so he immediately said, "Young Master Su, no matter how many resources are distributed to more people, it may not have an immediate effect. However, if they are concentrated on Meng Tong and let his strength rise to the peak of the early stage of foundation establishment, what do you think?" Hearing this, Su Lingchong's eyes suddenly lit up. Not bad, not bad. As long as we let Meng Tong regain an overwhelming advantage in strength, then no matter how many early-stage foundation establishment cultivators Lin Yi and the others toss about, it will be useless. Old Meng, your idea is not bad. However, after a pause, Su Lingchong immediately shook his head and said, "However, although what you said is right, if I remember correctly, Meng Tong just broke through to the foundation establishment stage last month, and he even took the foundation establishment pill and the foundation establishment liquid. If you want him to reach the peak of the early stage of foundation establishment in a short period of time, it is easier said than done." At the side, Meng Tong was originally overjoyed, thinking that he could get a lot of benefits this time. However, now that he heard Su Lingchong's words, his heart immediately sank to the bottom. Now that even young Master Su said so, wouldn't his grand wish of breaking through to the peak of the early stage of foundation establishment in a short period of time to find Lin Yi and the others for revenge become a daydream? Chapter 38:10. Meng Jiaguang's words were quite emotional, and it could even be said that his voice was tearful. Even a smart person like Su Lingchong was somewhat bewitched for a moment. The meaning of Meng Jiaguang's words couldn't be clearer. If they wanted to deal with Lin Yi, this was the only way out. They had to throw resources at Meng Tong, so that he could reach the peak of the early stage of the foundation establishment realm as soon as possible, and regain their advantage in terms of strength and rank. Otherwise, they could only watch helplessly as Lin Yi and his gang continued to be arrogant. At that time, not only would their subordinates lose face, but more importantly, Su Lingchong, the young master, would lose face as well. If they couldn't even deal with Lin Yi, a mere newcomer in the secular world, then how could they talk about their great ambitions in the future? But how could it be easy to quickly raise Meng Tong, an expert in the early stage of the foundation establishment realm, to the peak of the early stage of the foundation establishment realm? If this guy's strength was profound and he had already touched the barrier between the early stage of the foundation establishment realm and the peak of the early stage of the foundation establishment realm, then it would be fine. After all, this was only a matter of a foundation-breaking pill, so young Master Su had no reason to hesitate. The problem was that this guy had only been in the foundation establishment realm for less than a month, and he didn't even rely on his own strength. Instead, he relied on the foundation-building pill and the foundation-building liquid to forcibly build his foundation. It could be said that the foundation of this guy, Meng Tong, was even worse than other experts in the early stage of the foundation establishment realm. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been defeated twice by Qiao Hongkai, who had only been in the foundation establishment realm for a few days. The martial arts technique that he cultivated, Thousand Kicks, could theoretically give him a lot of advantage against experts in the same level as him against Xiao Hongcai's cold iron palm. However, he still could only fight to a draw with Xiao Hongcai twice. This in itself was already very telling. To forcefully raise such a weak expert in the early stage of the foundation establishment realm to the peak of the early stage of the foundation establishment realm, even with young Master Su's background, it wasn't to the extent that he didn't have any means to do so. However, the resources that would be consumed was not something that a mere foundation-breaking pill could compare to. If the pill resources here were converted into spiritual medicine, it was definitely not as simple as a few hundred spirit jades, but at least 1,000 spirit jades. Such an enormous price was something that even a young master like Su Lingqiong, who possessed an exceedingly deep background, would absolutely feel heartache to the point of spitting blood once he spent it. Moreover, if he really had such a powerful pill that could forcefully raise a person's level, why didn't he keep it for his own use? Why did he give it to Meng Tong, who wasn't even a trusted aide? But looking at the eager expressions of Meng Jiuguang and the rest, Su Lingqiong was, after all, a young master of a region. He still felt a little embarrassed. After all, what Meng Jiuguang said was the truth. If he didn't think of a way to quickly raise Meng Tong's strength, then it would be very difficult to punish Lin Yi's group of idiots who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. In the face of absolute strength, no matter how clever Meng Jiuguang was, in the end, he still couldn't replace Meng Tong. No matter how ingenious the plan was, in the end, not to mention Lin Yi himself, even his two subordinates might not be able to handle it. What else could he do? And if it wasn't a last resort, Su Lingqiong didn't want to take the unorthodox path of assassinating Lin Yi. Even if this method was simple and direct, it would still leave behind something that could be used against him. If the people from the law enforcement hall were to sniff out any clues, then he, young Master Su, would be finished for the rest of his life. Before the core interests were involved, it was obviously not worth it for Su Lingqiong to take such a risk to deal with a mere Lin Yi. The most realistic and reliable way was to let Meng Jiuguang deal with him. After hesitating for a long time, Su Lingqiong glanced at the pitiful Meng Tong. Then he turned to Meng Jiuguang and said, "With Meng Tong's current conditions, if we want to forcibly raise his level, ordinary elixirs are definitely not enough. If we really want to do this, I think we can only try some unorthodox methods. What do you think, old Meng? Unorthodox methods?" Meng Jiuguang was stunned, then he nodded repeatedly and said, "Young Master Su is wise, old Meng actually thinks so too. If it's ordinary elixirs, it's impossible to achieve the effect we need." Meng Tong was confused as he listened to the conversation between the two. He simply didn't know what the so-called unorthodox methods were. He only knew that young Master Su seemed to have agreed, and he was secretly delighted in his heart. Little did he know that anything that was called an unorthodox method meant that it wasn't an ordinary path. As everyone knew, when it came to cultivation, no matter how careful one was, one step would mean that every step would be wrong. The risks involved were not to be trifled with. In fact, whether it was Su Lingqiong or Meng Jiuguang, they were both well aware of this. With young Master Su's background, if he really wanted to help Meng Tong raise his level at all costs, there were definitely more reliable ways. For example, Lin Yi's method of using the Foundation Establishment Pill and the Foundation Establishment Barrier Breaking Pill. This kind of elixir combination could not only raise one's strength in a short period of time, but also had no side effects. Even if it failed, there would be no danger. Although young Master Su might not be able to get his hands on the Foundation Establishment Pill, he also had a way to get other elixirs to replace it. It was just that each of these elixirs was incomparably precious. Even if he spent thousands of spiritual jades, he might not be able to buy them. Even if young Master Su had them on hand, it was impossible for him to give them to Meng Tong. Moreover, even if young Master Su was truly righteous and generous to the point that he was willing to take out a pill of this level, it was absolutely impossible for it to fall into Meng Tong's hands. In the middle, Meng Jiuguang would have already reached out and snatched it away. How could he leave it for such a foolish trash like Meng Tong? There was never a free lunch in the sky. Meng Tong actually foolishly believed in young Master Su and Meng Jiuguang. He believed that these two people would really give him such great benefits. It could only be said that he was really blind. Seeing that Meng Jiuguang had no objection, young Master Su directly ignored Meng Tong's reaction and immediately said, "Then let's do it this way. I happen to have a meridian heart-breaking pill in my collection. It was given to me by a senior alchemist a few years ago. As long as it is used well, it is enough to raise a level. It doesn't matter how poor the foundation is. It turns out to be the meridian heart-breaking pill. Meng Jiuguang's eyelids couldn't help but twitch when he heard this. He had also heard about this elixir by chance. It was a kind of extremely heaven-defying elixir, but at the same time, it also made people shudder. Chapter 38:11. What did it feel like to have your heart broken? No one knew, because once the heart was broken, even the strongest practitioner would die without a doubt. However, ever since the meridian heart-shattering pill was invented, it forced living people to experience the pain of a broken heart that was worse than death. Once consumed, before breaking through to the next level, they could only endure the pain. If they were stuck there for the rest of their lives, they would only be freed when they died. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that the meridian heart-shattering pill was a pill that tormented one's self. No matter how miraculous its effects were, no one dared to use it because of the strong side effects. Once consumed, the consequences would be unimaginable. The person who created this elixir was a genius elixir refiner, and it was said that he was extremely talented, even on par with the current miracle doctor Zhang Liju. But different from Zhang Liju, this genius elixir refiner had never been recognized by the mainstream of the practitioner's world. Because he created all sorts of unorthodox recipes, he was classified as an evil practitioner, and was hunted by the righteous sections. All he could do was hide from them. Until one day, his wife, who he had been relying on for survival, was surrounded and killed by cultivators of the righteous sections. Due to his lack of strength, he could only watch helplessly as his wife died. From that day onwards, this genius alchemist officially joined the evil cultivators' camp. In order to remind him not to forget the humiliation he had suffered, and at the same time to quickly improve his strength, the meridian heart-shattering pill was created. However, although the effects of the meridian heart-shattering pill were heaven-defying and its side effects were shocking, because the pill formula was rarely circulated on the market and there were very few alchemists who could refine it, its reputation was far from matching its heaven-defying effects. It was only circulated among a very small number of alchemists and well-informed people. If it wasn't for luck, even someone as experienced as Meng Jiuguang wouldn't have heard of it, much less a newbie like Meng Tong. Even now, Meng Tong was still completely unaware of the hidden danger in this place. He was even daydreaming about it. The name Meridian Heart-Shattering Pill sounded like something incredible. Could it be that after using this pill, he would be able to shatter someone's heart with just a wave of his hand? More importantly, it could forcibly raise one's strength by a level. What an amazing pill! Old Meng. It shouldn't be a problem to give this Meridian Heart-Shattering Pill to Meng Tong, right? Su Lingchong asked again. He was well aware of the side effects of the Meridian Heart-Shattering Pill, so even though he knew that this pill was very rare, he didn't feel bad about it. After all, he definitely wouldn't use it himself. It could only be a collector's item in his hands. If he could use it to deal with Lin Yi, that would be making the best use of everything. As for whether or not Meng Tong's life would be ruined after taking it, that was not within his scope of consideration. In the end, trash like Meng Tong was nothing in his eyes. He couldn't even be considered an underling. At best, he was just a chess piece. Since he was a chess piece, he naturally didn't need to consider anything like human rights. After using him, if he was destroyed, then so be it. He could just find another one. However, Meng Jiuguang was different. Not only was Meng Tong his underling, but they were also relatives. If he watched Meng Tong jump into the fire pit without saying a word, then not only would he be blamed by Meng Tong in the future, he would also be too ashamed to face anyone when he returned home. Young Master Su still valued Meng Jiuguang, so at this time, he still had to ask for Meng Jiuguang's opinion. Meng Jiuguang couldn't help but hesitate. Even if Meng Tong was his relative, Meng Tong was still his most loyal underling. No matter how black-bellied Meng Jiuguang was, he still had to consider his own reputation. After all, if even Meng Tong was tricked by him, then if this matter was spread out, who would be willing to work for him, Meng Jiuguang? However, While Meng Jiaguang was hesitating, Meng Tong, who didn't know what was going on, jumped out impatiently and volunteered. "Young Master Su, I can do it! I won't let young Master Su down! Ninth cousin brother, say something!" At the same time, Meng Tong secretly tugged on Meng Jiaguang's sleeves, hinting him to quickly agree. Meng Jiaguang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This saying that the ignorant are fearless is true. It was rare for him to be kind and hesitate for a while, but in the end, Meng Tong was rushing into the fire pit himself. He couldn't even stop him. And looking at this situation, if he didn't quickly agree on his behalf, he might even think that he was blocking his way, and he would bear a grudge for no reason. In desperation, Meng Jiaguang could only nod at Su Lingchong and said, "Thank you, young Master Su, for your generous reward. Thank you, young Master Su, for your generous reward." Meng Tong also hurriedly expressed his gratitude, his face full of joy. Seeing this, Meng Jiaguang could only shake his head speechlessly. Although he also knew that as long as he explained the stakes clearly to Meng Tong, no matter how brainless Meng Tong was, he would definitely not rush to take this elixir. But how could he say it in this situation? Disregarding everything else, just the fact that young Master Su was glaring at them like a tiger watching its prey made it difficult for Meng Jiaguang to explain in detail. After all, young Master Su had brought up the Meridian heart-shattering pill because they had asked for it. If they were to be picky and refuse to cooperate, then where would young Master Su put his face? On one hand, Meng Tong, this idiot, was rushing to jump into the fire pit, and on the other hand, he still had to take into account young Master Su's face. So, for Meng Jiaguang, taking advantage of the situation and agreeing was the only choice he could make. As for whether Meng Tong would bear a grudge in the future, this was no longer in the scope of Meng Jiaguang's consideration. Who asked this guy to rush into it? This was all Meng Tong's own idea. Meng Jiaguang never said a single word of instigation. At that time, even if someone wanted to blame someone, it wouldn't be his head. "Okay, then let's do it this way. I'll go back and look for it. After 2 days, I'll ask someone to send this Meridian heart-shattering elixir over. Old Meng, you also help Meng Tong prepare well. The effect of this elixir is heaven-defying, which means that the medicinal effect is very overbearing. If we don't make thorough preparations in advance, it might be dangerous," Su Lingchong instructed. Chapter 38:12. For an unorthodox pill like the Meridian heart-shattering pill, one had to be even more careful when taking it. Ignoring one's foundation and forcibly increasing one's strength by one level, what kind of concept was that? Even if it was the foundation establishment pill, its effect could only let Lin Yi touch the barrier of the early stage of foundation establishment in advance, but it could not let him become an expert of the early stage of foundation establishment in one go. From this aspect, the effect of the Meridian heart-shattering pill was even higher than the foundation establishment pill. Even without considering the side effects of the heartbreaking pain, just based on the overbearing effect of increasing one's strength, one could think of the hidden risks in it even with one's toes. What's more, Meng Tong's current state was that he had yet to recover from his serious injuries. If he didn't make any preparations and just let him take it for free, let alone advance to the early stage of foundation establishment, he probably wouldn't even be able to feel the heartbreaking pain, and would have to report to the underworld directly. Although Meng Tong didn't have much of a brain, he still had this bit of common sense. Hearing Su Lingchong's words, he thought that Su Lingchong was concerned about him, and immediately said gratefully, "Young Master Su, you really care about your subordinates too much. To be able to work under you is simply a blessing that can't be cultivated for several lifetimes." It was just that young Master Su didn't care about the life or death of Meng Tong, he only cared about whether the Meridian heart-shattering pill would go to waste. Although the Meridian heart-shattering pill's side effects were terrible, it was still a very rare pill, and its effect was indeed heaven-defying. Even if Su Lingchong didn't know how to take it himself, if it was wasted without any effect, he would still feel some heartache. Towards Meng Tong's brainless display of loyalty, Su Lingchong could only speechlessly roll his eyes. How could an idiot like you, who was cheated by others and still helped them with money, be worthy of being my subordinate. At most, you're just cannon fodder. Meng Jiuguang could only smile awkwardly, looking at Meng Tong's eyes with pity and helplessness. He really didn't know what to say to such a brainless cousin. At this moment, Lin Yi and the others looked at Su Lingchong and Meng Jiuguang's group muttering non-stop. They couldn't help but feel suspicious. What the hell are these guys up to this time? This was a very natural connection. After all, young Master Su was Meng Jiuguang's big backer. Now that Meng Jiuguang saw that he couldn't do anything to them, the only choice left was to seek help from young Master Su. Boss, why don't we make a guess? Let's see what these guys will do next. Xiao Hongkai didn't seem worried at all as he smiled at Lin Yi and the others. Recently, he was in a pretty good mood. Due to the 2 consecutive fights with Meng Tong, which resulted in both sides suffering heavy losses, he quickly adapted to the strength of the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm. His strength had completely stabilized. If he hadn't fought those 2 tough battles with Meng Tong, he wouldn't have been able to reach this level under normal circumstances. It would have taken at least half a month or even more than a month of bitter cultivation. But now, he had accomplished it in just a few days. It would be strange if he was not in a good mood. Senior Brother Bitter smiled and said, "In my opinion, Senior Brother Meng and the others may want to get a few elixirs like the limit of the golden elixir. Senior Brother Meng and the others may want to get a few elixirs like the limit of the golden elixir. In the current situation, apart from elixirs like the limit of the golden elixir that can instantly increase strength, they can't do anything to these junior brothers with just Meng Tongyi. The limit of the golden elixir could increase one's strength in a short period of time. In this way, even if they were all in the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm, it would be impossible for Xiao Hongkai to defeat Meng Tong, who had taken the limit of the golden elixir. Moreover, there was at least a 3-day buffer between each round of the challenge. As long as the plan was in place, they could completely avoid the weakness period of the limit of the golden elixir. In Senior Brother Bitter's understanding, this was already the best solution he could think of. In fact, it was indeed feasible and the price was not high. It was only a limit of the golden elixir. Regarding Senior Brother Bitter's words, Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai agreed. However, only Lin Yi shook his head thoughtfully. If it was only Meng Jiuguang himself, it wouldn't be strange for him to use the limit of the golden elixir. But now even young Master Su Lingchong has appeared. If it's still limited to the limit of the golden elixir, it's too small of a fight. It doesn't seem like this young master's style. In my opinion, what they're plotting is definitely not as simple as a few rounds of the challenge. There must be some kind of higher level method. Lin Yi analyzed. Yes, that's right. Junior Brother Lin's words make more sense. Senior Brother Bitter and the others nodded in unison when they heard this. Indeed, as Lin Yi said, although Senior Brother Bitter's idea was reliable, it was only limited to Meng Jiuguang's level. With Meng Jiuguang's background, being able to help Meng Tong obtain the limit of the golden elixir was already considered to have done his best. However, he didn't consider that there was still young Master Su standing behind him. For a young master at Su Lingchong's level, the limit of the golden elixir was obviously too small of a deal. If it was just a discussion about a mere limit of the golden elixir, how could he discuss it with Meng Jiuguang and the others for such a long time with his identity? Moreover, Lin Yi and the others clearly saw that Su Lingchong had hesitation in the beginning. To be able to make him, young Master Su, hesitate in his heart, what kind of big move was this? In that case, we have to guard against them in the future. Otherwise, even if Meng Tong can't deal with us, with this young Master Su and Meng Jiuguang's crafty plots, it's also impossible to guard against them. Xiao Ran said with a solemn expression. Lin Yi nodded. Yes, but there's no need to worry too much. If soldiers come, we'll deal with them. In the end, strength is the way of the king. For the time being, Meng Jiuguang only has Meng Tong, who is in the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm. This is a fact that no one can change. I actually hope that this scum, Meng Tong, will quickly eat some awesome medicinal pill before challenging me. Otherwise, with his pitiful courage, I reckon that he will never dare to challenge me again in this lifetime. Xiao Hongkai laughed. Although both sides were defeated twice in a row, for Xiao Hongkai, who had just succeeded in the Foundation establishment realm a few days ago and was at a great disadvantage in terms of martial skills, this was already the same as the weak defeating the strong. As for Ming Tong, who originally had the absolute upper hand, there was probably already a shadow in his heart. If there was no huge breakthrough in his strength, it would be very difficult for him to have the confidence to face Xiao Hongkai, and it was even more impossible for him to defeat Xiao Hongkai and wash away his previous shame. Just wait, I believe that they won't let you down. Lin Yi smiled faintly. Chapter 38:13. Putting aside the fact that his hidden strength wasn't something that someone like Meng Tong could compete with, just the fact that he had planted 2 spies, Li Jingming and Zhong Pingliang, was enough to give him the upper hand in many things. Naturally, he didn't have to worry too much about the so-called conspiracies. In the 5th round of the newcomer challenge, because of the arrival of Su Lingchong's group, every match was full of the smell of gunpowder, but there weren't too many twists and turns. In the end, Li Jingming defeated the challenger once again. As for Lin Yi, the publicly recognized number 1 newcomer, he played an entire round of soy sauce. After the challenge ended, the newcomers dispersed. However, Li Jingming, who had just won a match and gained a lot of points, didn't look much better because of this. He didn't go back to his cave like the other newcomers, but went straight to find Meng Jiuguang, his real support in name. Senior brother Meng, I have some ideas about Lin Yi's group. I don't know if I can report it to you, senior brother. Li Jingming deliberately squeezed out a smile and walked to Meng Jiuguang's side. Oh? Jingming, what ideas do you have? Tell me. Hearing that it was related to Lin Yi, Meng Jiuguang immediately became interested. However, Meng Tong, who was beside him, curled his lips in disdain. He's just a heaven stage full cycle. What ideas can he have? It's just empty talk, a waste of time. Although Meng Tong had not recovered from his serious injuries, because of what happened just now, his spirit was completely different from before. He was completely immersed in the joy of becoming a peak early-stage Foundation establishment master. A mere heaven stage full cycle like Li Jingming was nothing to him. Hearing that, Li Jingming couldn't help but want to curse. Damn Meng Tong, if you didn't get the Foundation elixir from Su Lingchong and use it together with the Foundation elixir, do you think you can succeed in building your foundation? Come to think of it, during the trial in the back mountain, if I hadn't sacrificed my own elixirs and cooperated with you, you wouldn't even have been able to obtain this Foundation establishment pill. Now you actually have the face to mock me for being weak? This person is too shameless. However, Li Jingming suppressed his anger. Ignoring Meng Tong's sarcastic remarks, he turned to Meng Jiuguang and said, Senior Marshal Brother Meng, you saw it too. Lin Yi's group already has 3 early-stage foundation building cultivators, while we only have boss Meng Tong. If this goes on, the overall gap will only grow bigger and bigger. So I think the most important thing right now is to do it. We need to find someone to share the burden with boss Meng Tong. Only then can we block Lin Yi's attack and regain the initiative in the future. Hearing that, Meng Jiuguang immediately fell silent. They were all smart people. Although Li Jingming didn't say it directly, his meaning was already very clear. He wanted to be like Meng Tong. Stand up and deal with Lin Yi's group. If it was just this simple hot-blooded idea, Meng Jiuguang wouldn't be put in a difficult position. The key was that Li Jingming wasn't a brainless trash like Meng Tong. With his current strength of heaven stage, wanting to stand up and challenge Lin Yi's group of 3 early-stage foundation building cultivators was simply a fool's talk. Moreover, he would absolutely not do that. The key point of Li Jingming's words was that he wanted to become the person who could share the burden with Meng Tong, and the prerequisite was naturally that he had that kind of strength. At the very least, he had to be an early-stage foundation building expert. And if he wanted to break through to foundation building in a short period of time, then he must have the coordination of medicinal pills. Not to mention the foundation building elixir like Meng Tong did. At the very least, a foundation building elixir was the most basic. This was what Meng Jiaguang found difficult. In terms of strength and loyalty, in his opinion, Li Jingming was already qualified enough. Normally, giving him a foundation-building elixir wouldn't be a big deal, but the problem was that he didn't have a foundation-building elixir on hand. For a young master like Su Lingchong, a mere foundation-building elixir was nothing in his eyes. Even if it was foundation-building elixir that couldn't be bought in the market, he could get it with just a call. But for Meng Jiaguang, this matter wasn't so easy to handle. Although he was the big brother in charge of the newcomers in Blue Cloud Pavilion and was in charge of the distribution of the newcomers' benefits, it seemed like he had quite a bit of power, but the resources in his hands had never included the foundation-building elixir. One had to know that in the early years, due to the lack of resources, the Welcome Pavilion didn't even provide the foundation-building elixir to the newcomers. If the newcomers wanted to break through to foundation building, the biggest thing they relied on was the training cave and a bit of spirit jade. The foundation-building elixir, on the other hand, was a benefit that had only appeared in recent years, and the quantity was extremely limited. Usually, it would be left for the last few newcomers with the best performance. Until this year, due to the special care of the miracle doctor Zhang Liju, who was far away in Middle Island, the amount of foundation-building elixir distributed to the Welcome Pavilion had increased exponentially. This was why the first month of the Back Mountain Trials was rewarded with foundation-building elixir. This was something unimaginable in previous years. But even so, with Meng Jiaguang's position, he still couldn't interfere with the distribution of the foundation-building elixir. The reason was simple: he was only a senior disciple in charge of the Welcome Pavilion, and he was far from qualified. In the entire Welcome Pavilion, there were only 2 people who had the right to speak on the distribution of the foundation-building elixir. One was the head Hu Yunfeng, and the other was the vice head Feng Song. According to the rules, the third head had a certain amount of right to speak, but Lu Bianren had long since become a marginal character, and he was about to be kicked out, so naturally, he wasn't considered. If it was said that Meng Jiaguang had already replaced Lu Bianren as the third head, he would be able to interfere with the distribution of the foundation-building elixir out of respect for young Master Su. But unfortunately, he wasn't the third head yet. The distribution of the foundation-building elixir had nothing to do with him, and as a master who was about to break through to the middle phase of the foundation-building elixir, there was no way he would store elixirs that he couldn't use. What could he do? However, if Meng Jiaguang just rejected Li Jingming's request and said that he couldn't do anything about it, it wouldn't make sense. This wasn't because he suddenly found his conscience, but because of all sorts of deeper concerns. Not only was it embarrassing to do this in front of his follower, but if word of this got out, it would be a huge blow to his reputation as the head senior disciple. After all, Li Jingming was the first new disciple under him, other than Meng Tong. Compared to the other new disciples, Li Jingming was obviously stronger, and it could be said that he was willing to work without complaint. Even if he didn't make any big contributions, at least he had put in blood, sweat, and tears. Chapter 38:14. Biased, useless, mean, ungrateful. Once these rumors spread, the hearts of the rookies under him would scatter. Once the hearts of the rookies were scattered, it would be difficult to gather them again. If even the rookies under him no longer took his words seriously, then what difference would there be between him, the so-called big senior brother in charge, and this kind of transparent, marginalized person? Meng Jiaguang was very clear that even if he had already latched onto a big tree like Su Lingchong, if he wanted to be valued in the future, then he still needed to have enough strength. This strength did not only refer to himself, but also to the rookies under him. These people were the foundation for him to soar in the future. Therefore, Meng Jiaguang could not just reject Li Jingming. Even if he did not have a foundation establishment pill, he would at least have to give a reasonable answer. After hesitating for a while, Meng Jiaguang finally said hesitantly, "Jingming, I am very gratified that you have such intentions. However, it's a pity that I don't have a foundation establishment pill on hand right now. Otherwise, why would I need you to ask? I would have given it to you long ago, right?" Hearing this, Li Jingming's heart immediately sank. Although he had secretly become Lin Yi's spy, what he told Meng Jiaguang about wanting to break through to Foundation establishment was not a lie at all. As one of the top 5 rookies in Blue Cloud Pavilion, the other 4 were already early-stage Foundation establishment experts. Only he, Li Jingming, was still struggling at Heaven's Stage Great Circle. Moreover, he could not see any hope. This kind of feeling was really a kind of torture for him. Although he carried a blood feud and wanted to keep a low profile, this low profile also had a limit. If he, Li Jingming, watched helplessly as the people around him, whose talents were not as good as his, reached Foundation establishment successfully, and he, Li Jingming, remained at Heaven's Stage Great Circle without moving, then it would not be low profile, but idiotic. Therefore, Li Jingming really wanted to break through to Foundation establishment. Moreover, he did not ask for much, just a Foundation establishment pill. Logically speaking, Li Jingming was now Lin Yi's spy, and this kind of thing could be brought up to Lin Yi. However, he hadn't been on Lin Yi's side for long. Apart from sending a few letters of intelligence, he felt that he had not done anything for Lin Yi. He didn't have any outstanding achievements. Strictly speaking, when he first joined Lin Yi's side, he was forced to save his life after his sneak attack failed. It was not voluntary, so Lin Yi spared his life was already a great kindness. Therefore, he really did not have the face to ask Lin Yi for this. In contrast, the current situation happened to be that Lin Yi's group was in an absolute advantage, and Meng Jiaguang also needed someone to stand up and share the pressure for him. Therefore, Li Jingming wanted to take this opportunity to ask Meng Jiaguang. Looking at his past achievements, coupled with the current grim situation, Meng Jiaguang should try to get him a Foundation establishment pill. But unexpectedly, Meng Jiaguang did not have this intention at all. Although he said that he did not have a Foundation establishment pill, this sentence was very likely to be the truth, but if he did not have it, couldn't he think of a way? It must be known that Meng Tong, who was also a subordinate of this big senior brother, had consumed a large number of rare pills. Not to mention the Foundation establishment pill, the Foundation establishment liquid, and even the 4th grade Great Recover pill, which was known as a life-saving divine pill. Moreover, there were 2 of them. On Meng Tong, who was a piece of trash that couldn't even be supported by a wall, he was willing to invest such a large amount of his hard-earned capital. As for him, who was similarly loyal and devoted, or at least had been a loyal and devoted little brother before, he wasn't even willing to part with a single Foundation establishment pill. Favoring one and discriminating against the other, this kind of conduct really made one's heart go cold. Fortunately, back then, he was wise enough to secretly rely on Boss Lin Yi as a spy. Otherwise, if he really wholeheartedly followed Meng Jiaguang, this kind of trash, to rely on a mountain and work like a cow or a horse, then he, Li Jingming, would really be blind, walking down a dark path. Seeing Li Jingming's disappointed expression, Meng Jiaguang also knew that his actions were somewhat unjustifiable. After thinking for a while, he then added, "However, although senior brother does not have a Foundation establishment pill on hand, I have specially prepared 3 sets of elixir ingredients to refine the Foundation establishment pill for you, Jingming. When we return, I can give them to you. As long as you find an alchemist to help you, not to mention 1 Foundation establishment pill, even 3 Foundation establishment pills will be fine. I guarantee that it will be enough for you to break through to the Foundation establishment stage." Li Jingming was stunned. At first, he thought that it was rare for Meng Jiaguang to find his conscience, but in the end, it was actually to give him the ingredients and let him find an alchemist to refine the Foundation establishment pill himself. Are you King kidding me? Although the Foundation establishment pill was an extremely rare pill for a Heaven Stage Great Circle expert like him, strictly speaking, it could not be considered rare at all. The elixir ingredients needed to refine the Foundation establishment pill were basically some common goods. A set of Foundation establishment pill ingredients, even if measured by the market price, would at most be worth 3 or 4 pieces of spiritual jade. 3 sets of Foundation establishment pill ingredients added together, at most, would be worth the price of 10 pieces of spiritual jade. In other words, Meng Jiuguang would at most be willing to spend 10 pieces of spiritual jade on him, Li Jingming. Wanting him to invest more than this, there was no way. Even Meng Jiuguang was not willing to even take out 10 pieces of spiritual jade. Although his words sounded very nice, saying that it was specially prepared for Li Jingming, but common goods like the foundation establishment pill ingredients did not need to be specially prepared at all. Any cultivator with a little bit of background, after unconsciously accumulating in the past, would be able to casually dig out a few sets of these elixir ingredients from their personal storage. At the end of the day, these elixir ingredients were simply dispensable goods to Meng Jiuguang. They were thrown into a corner, trash that he would normally not even bother to take a look at. But now, he took advantage of the situation and said that they were elixir ingredients that were specially prepared for Li Jingming. If it was not for the fact that he had been carrying a blood feud for so many years and had trained a body of extraordinary forbearance, Li Jingming would have directly scolded out loud. You, Meng Jiuguang, do you have to trick your own people like this? If he directly shook his head and refused, even if he was mean and ungrateful, at least it could be said to be open and aboveboard. In the end, Meng Jiuguang not only did not want to give him the foundation establishment pill, but also had to worry about his reputation. So, he stubbornly used these elixir ingredients that even he himself looked down upon to deceive him, and even made it seem like he was very magnanimous and considerate of his subordinates. What did it mean to be a whore and also to have a chastity? This was it. Before Li Jingming could say anything, Meng Tong, who was at the side, jumped up in shock. F***CK, 3 sets of foundation establishment pill ingredients. This was 3 building foundation dawn. 9th cousin brother, you are too biased, you have never given me so much before. Chapter 38:15. Li Jingming's face darkened even further. A perfectly reasonable and legitimate request was casually duped by someone else with some scraps. How could this be considered as taking advantage of others and being secretly happy? If it was Meng Tong, you'd better show me how happy you are. 3 sets of foundation building pill materials, in theory, were indeed enough to refine 3 foundation building pills. It was also enough for him, Li Jingming, to break through to foundation building realm. But the problem was, as a mere newcomer in Blue Cloud Pavilion, where would he find the financial resources to find a pill master to help refine it? At the pill hall, no matter what kind of pill was refined, other than needing to provide the materials himself, there was another basic condition, which was to hand over 200 spiritual jades. One had to know that even senior brother Ku Bai, who had many years of savings, couldn't meet this condition, let alone Li Jingming, a mere heaven-stage great circle newcomer? The greatest value of a pill wasn't in the materials, but in the refining process. Not to mention 3 sets of materials, even if it was 5 or 8 sets, no pill master could guarantee that they could definitely refine one foundation building pill. Putting aside the pill hall, if he wanted to go to the city square to buy a foundation establishment pill, it would cost at least 250 spirit jades. He, Li Jingming, simply did not have this purchasing power. In other words, the 3 sets of foundation building pill materials that Meng Jiuguang gave him were completely useless. Meng Jiuguang must have completely expected this result, but he still had to pretend to be a good person here. Looking at Meng Jiuguang and Meng Tong's faces, thinking about how blind he was to sell his life for these kinds of people, Li Jingming simply felt disgusted from the bottom of his heart. Then thank you, senior brother Meng, for your concern. Li Jingming could only forcefully suppress his sullen depression and feign civility with the other party. Meng Jiuguang chuckled. Jingming, it's good that you can understand my painstaking efforts. I'm very gratified. Work hard in the future, I definitely won't mistreat you. Of course, I definitely won't disappoint senior brother Meng's expectations. The corner of Li Jingming's mouth twitched unconsciously. How stupid must I be to believe Meng Jiuguang's bullshit that he wouldn't mistreat me? Now that things had come to this, he had completely lost hope in Meng Jiuguang. If not for the fact that he wanted to continue working as a mole for Lin Yi, he even had the intention to fall out with the other party in front of everyone. Fortunately, his forbearance was far above that of an ordinary person. No matter how disgusted he felt, he would not let it go. He could also continue to endure it. In addition to the consideration of continuing to be a spy for Lin Yi, what Meng Tong said just now also made him very concerned. Meng Tong actually said that he was about to advance a step further. Just now, when Su Lingchong and Meng Jiaguang were talking, they purposely found a remote corner. Even Li Jingming couldn't get too close, so he didn't know what these people were planning. However, he could already be sure that what these people were talking about was definitely related to the words that Meng Tong blurted out just now. As for Meng Tong's casual words, if one carefully pondered over them, there was a great mystery hidden in this. Meng Tong had just built his foundation not long ago. Furthermore, he relied on the foundation building elixir and foundation building elixir to barely succeed. Logically speaking, with his foundation, he wouldn't be able to advance a step further within a few years. But this guy actually shouted out such words now. And judging from this tone, these words shouldn't be Meng Tong's daydreaming. It was real and practical. Then the biggest possibility was that Su Lingchong and Meng Jiaguang had reached some kind of agreement in private. And to be able to let Meng Tong advance a step further in a short period of time, it could be seen that young Master Su was preparing to pay a big price again. Although with Li Jingming's vision, it was hard to imagine anything that could let Meng Tong, this kind of trash with a weak foundation, advance a step further in a short period of time. There was no doubt about this information. It had to be revealed to Boss Lin Yi as soon as possible, so that they could prepare early. Li Jingming knew that with Lin Yi's hidden strength at the peak of the early stage of foundation building, even if Meng Tong was able to advance a step further, it was still impossible for him to pose any substantial threat to him. However, Xiao Ran and Qiao Hongkai were different. Although the two of them were already in the early stage of the foundation establishment realm, if they were to face Meng Tong, who was at the peak of the early stage of the foundation establishment realm, it would be very bad for them. After receiving 3 sets of foundation building elixir materials from Meng Jiaguang, late that night, Li Jingming took advantage of the fact that there was no one in the surroundings and went to Lin Yi's cave number 1 at the foot of the mountain. "Jingming, why did you come personally?" Seeing Li Jingming appear at the entrance of his cave, Lin Yi couldn't help but be astonished, and then immediately led him into the cave. As Lin Yi's spy, in order to ensure his concealment and safety, under normal circumstances, Li Jingming had to avoid any contact with Lin Yi. Even if he wanted to pass on information, it would be through secret codes and notes, and absolutely not face-to-face communication. After all, no matter what, Meng Jiaguang could be considered a cunning old fox. Moreover, with so many new Blue Cloud Pavilion members under his command, he had many eyes and ears. No matter how careful Li Jingming was, once he came into contact with Lin Yi, it would be very easy for him to give himself away, and the outcome would be very hard to say. Since ancient times, traitors were always more hateful than enemies. Perhaps Meng Jiaguang wouldn't do anything to Lin Yi's underlings like Xiao Ran and Qiao Hongkai, but if he discovered that Li Jingming had betrayed him and become Lin Yi's spy, he might really take the risk and kill him out of desperation. However, the reason why Li Jingming took the risk to personally appear at Lin Yi's cave this time was because he had another purpose. "Boss Lin Yi, I inadvertently found out some information from Meng Tong's words today, and I feel that I need to report it to you." Li Jingming's face was serious, and he immediately told everything that Meng Tong had said before, as well as his own analysis and conjecture, to Lin Yi. "There's actually such a thing? It seems that this young Master Su is really willing to invest this kind of capital on Meng Tong. He really thinks highly of me." After listening, Lin Yi couldn't help but be stunned and speechless. His analysis was exactly the same as Li Jingming's. Although he didn't know what kind of capital Su Lingchong and Meng Jiaguang were prepared to invest, one thing was certain, and that was, as Lin Yi had previously guessed, the other party couldn't hold back and was going to make a move. From Meng Tong's words, it could already eliminate the possibility that senior brother had previously speculated. What he meant was definitely not as simple as using the limit of the gold core to temporarily increase his strength, but to actually increase his strength from the early stage of the Foundation Establishment realm to the peak of the early stage of the Foundation Establishment realm. Chapter 38:16. No matter how much a trash like Meng Tong leveled up, he wouldn't be a threat to Lin Yi. However, he had to think about his underlings. If they were caught off guard and lost one of Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai, the loss would be unacceptable. Boss Lin, you're being too serious. This is all part of my responsibility. I don't deserve your thanks. Li Jinming was moved. As expected, comparisons were odious. Both of them were new bosses, but when comparing Lin Yi to Meng Jiuguang and Meng Tong, the difference between them was like heaven and earth. You deserve it. If it weren't for your information, something might have happened to them. So, you don't have to be humble. I'll remember your contributions. Lin Yi smiled and patted Li Jinming. Li Jinming was touched. Then, he blushed and said, It's a pity that I didn't dare to continue probing with Meng Tong. Otherwise, with Meng Tong's arrogant and stupid behavior, it wouldn't be difficult to get the specific plan out of his mouth. It's fine. It's right that you didn't continue probing with him. Otherwise, with a sly old fox like Meng Jiuguang watching from the side, it would be easy for him to see something fishy. There's no need to lose the big picture because of small things. After all, safety comes first. Lin Yi comforted him. Then, he added, Moreover, your information is enough for me. Lin Yi wasn't being arrogant. He was speaking the truth. He suddenly remembered that when Su Lingchong and Meng Jiuguang were discussing in private, Miss Shengguan was present the whole time. Whether it was Su Lingchong or Meng Jiuguang, they were consciously avoiding the eyes and ears of others. Even their underlings like Li Jingming were not allowed to get close to them. However, they couldn't criticize Miss Shengguan. Shengguan Lana's status was even higher than Su Lingchong's. In addition, she deliberately pretended to be at loggerheads with Lin Yi. Whenever she wanted to hear something, she wouldn't hesitate. Su Lingchong and Meng Jiuguang couldn't wait to please her. Why would they stop her? So, even if he couldn't find out the specific content of the plan from Li Jingming, since he was already aware of this, Lin Yi could find a suitable opportunity to ask Miss Shengguan about it. After saying that, Lin Yi suddenly slapped his forehead. Right, I've got nothing to do these 2 days, so I'm planning to start refining pills. Jinming, you can go back and adjust yourself a bit. I'll give you 2 foundation pills when the time comes. Then I can start preparing to break through to the Foundation Establishment realm. As soon as Lin Yi said this, Li Jingming was stunned for a moment. Then, he couldn't help but feel a lump in his throat, and he almost cried. The reason why he had personally come to look for Lin Yi today, apart from providing him with information, was mainly because of the matter regarding the Foundation Establishment pills. Li Jingming didn't really want to ask Lin Yi because he didn't feel like he had done much, but to him, breaking through to foundation building was the most important thing right now. Otherwise, if this continued, they would fall behind others, and in the future, they would not be able to compete. Previously, he had been rebuffed by Meng Jiuguang. Now that he had turned to Lin Yi, the real boss, for help, Li Jingming had no choice but to do so. This could be determined from the fact that Xiao Honkai and Xiao Ran both succeeded in breaking through to the Foundation Establishment realm. The Foundation Establishment pill that Lin Yi had received as a reward from the Back Mountain trial should have already been given to Xiao Honkai, and as a newcomer, it was basically impossible for him to have a second Foundation Establishment pill on hand. But now, Li Jingming wasn't looking for Lin Yi to ask for a Foundation Establishment pill, but he wanted to ask Lin Yi to help him refine a Foundation Establishment pill. After all, he had just received 3 sets of ingredients for refining the Foundation Establishment pill from Meng Jiuguang, and Lin Yi had long been an alchemist in the secular world. This was already an open secret. But even if Lin Yi was an alchemist, he might not have the ability to refine a Foundation Establishment pill. He might not necessarily have the ability to refine a Foundation Establishment pill. But now, Li Jingming had no other choice but to look for Lin Yi to try his luck. However, what Li Jingming didn't expect was that before he could even think of how to ask, Lin Yi had already taken the initiative to bring it up. Moreover, from the beginning to the end, Lin Yi didn't make any additional requests. It was purely for the sake of helping him break through to the Foundation establishment realm. On one side was Meng Jiuguang's deceit, on the other side was Lin Yi's righteousness. With such a sharp contrast, if Li Jingming still didn't shed tears, then he would really be said to be heartless. Only when there was a contrast would there be a difference in superiority and inferiority. Compared to Lin Yi, Meng Jiuguang, this time, in Li Jingming's heart, it was as if he had been trampled into a cave. There was no comparison at all. Boss Lin Yi, actually, the reason I came to find you today, other than to report the information, is to ask you to help me refine the Foundation establishment pill. Li Jingming rubbed his nose and suppressed his emotions. Then, he took out the 3 sets of ingredients that Meng Jiuguang had given him and handed them to Lin Yi. Oh? You've even prepared the ingredients for the Foundation establishment pill? That's not bad, it saves me the trouble of making a trip out. Seeing this, Lin Yi's eyes lit up. Although the ingredients for refining the Foundation establishment pill were common goods that could be bought in the market square, Lin Yi didn't have enough on hand. After all, even if he had the intention to prepare his own spirit medicine storehouse, it had only been a short period of time and was far from enough. If Li Jingming didn't take them out, he would have to make a trip to the market square for a few of the spirit medicine storehouses. During the day, he had used his first impression to trick Yuzhe so that he wouldn't connect the 2 identities of Lin Yi and Lin Er together. However, even if he used his toes to think, he would know that Yuzhe and his master, Nan Tianyong, would definitely stay in the market square and continue to investigate. If they didn't dig out Lin Er, they absolutely wouldn't give up. Therefore, if Lin Yi went to the market square with the identity of Lin Er, it would be quite risky. If he wasn't careful, he could be blocked by Yuzhe and Nan Tianyong. Although Lin Yi didn't need to be afraid of Yuzhe, the other side still had Nan Tianyong. A guy who was able to sit in the position of supervising deacon of Soaring Sky Pavilion, his strength could be imagined. He was definitely not a small matter. Once he was blocked by these 2 people, with Lin Yi's current strength at the peak of the early stage of the Foundation establishment stage, he would definitely be in danger. However, if he didn't use the identity of Lin Yi and instead used Lin Yi's original appearance to go to the market square, it would be even easier for people to be suspicious. After all, the good jade that Lin Yi had in his possession had already been exchanged for useless jade. If he were to buy anything in the market square, once it was seen by someone with ulterior motives, it was very likely that it would cause Meng Jiuguang and the others to become suspicious. That would be somewhat bad. Chapter 38:17. But now, for the sake of Li Jingming, he decided to take some risks and make a trip. After all, Xiao Ran and Xiao Honghai had both succeeded in building their foundations, and Li Jingming was his secret follower, so he couldn't disappoint him too much. However, what Lin Yi didn't expect was that Li Jingming actually took the initiative to send the materials for the Foundation establishment pill to him. This was a pleasant surprise. That's enough. Jingming, go back and prepare first. I'll give you the Foundation establishment pill tomorrow. Lin Yi comforted Li Jingming. For him, who now had the godly pesticide cauldron, he could even successfully refine the Foundation establishment pill and the Foundation establishment barrier-breaking pill, so a mere Foundation establishment pill was naturally not a problem. Boss Lin Yi, then I'll leave first. Li Jingming nodded gratefully, but he didn't say any more flattering words and immediately left. He knew that Boss Lin Yi was different from people like Meng Jiuguang. Flattery and bragging had no effect on him. If he wanted to gain his true trust, he had to take concrete actions. And according to Lin Yi's usual style, as long as he sincerely worked for him, he would never treat himself badly. After watching Li Jingming leave, Lin Yi immediately began to prepare for work. Although refining the Foundation establishment pill was not challenging, it would still consume a lot of time. Therefore, before that, he had to at least take care of the 85 elixir seeds and ensure that they were infused with qi at a fixed time. According to the Sissy chief manager of the Spirit Medicine Nursery, it had been almost 20 days. Logically speaking, it should be about time. Even if the 85 spiritual herb seeds hadn't all grown, at least some of them should have developed first. However, what made Linny speechless was that a total of 85 elixir seeds seemed to be collectively silent. Nearly 20 days had passed, and there was no movement at all. Linny even began to wonder if it was because the density of the spirit chi in the space of his jade pendant was too high that these elixir seeds were not used to it. Even humans have times when they can't handle the nourishment, let alone other ordinary crops. If too much fertilizer was applied, the seedlings would also burn. Although ordinary crops could not be mentioned in the same breath as spirit medicine seeds that gathered the essence of heaven and earth, and the spirit energy of heaven and earth was not ordinary fertilizer, logically speaking, there should not be a lack of nourishment. But in the current situation, this possibility could not be ruled out. Fortunately, although these 85 spirit herb seeds showed no signs of development, the color of their seed coats was quite good, and they didn't look like they were about to wither. Linny felt that although these elixir seeds had not really begun to develop, they had been nourished in the space of the jade pendant for a period of time. His vitality was much better than when he first got his hands on him. He looked like he was malnourished. Although this was just Lin Yi's own speculation, there was some truth to it. Back then, that sissy manager had said that because these spirit herb seeds were cultivated in batches in the spirit medicine nursery, even if they could grow and survive, they would belong to the congenitally deficient batch. Not only could they not be left to cultivate, but even the quality of the cultivated spirit herb plants could not be compared to the spirit herbs that grew naturally in the wild. Everything had spirituality. Now that they were placed in the space of the jade pendant, which was a blessed environment, they could accumulate enough vitality to make up for the congenitally deficient vitality. This was completely possible. If that was the case, it would be a good thing for Linny. After all, he only had 2 seeds of the heart devourer exquisite grass. If the quality of the seeds turned out to be too low, he would be in trouble. If the quality of the final cultivated ones was too poor, it was very likely that they would not even be enough for 2 foundation building pills. However, no matter how he guessed, as long as these spirit herb seeds did not die, Linny could only continue to wait. He could not even seek advice from others. After all, this involved the space of the jade pendant, which was a very important secret. Unless it was someone he could completely trust, he definitely could not let others know. After imbuing the 85 spirit herb seeds with his chi as usual, Linny made some preparations. He then used the spirit herb materials provided by Li Jingning, and began to refine the foundation building pills. The process didn't need much elaboration. He'd had the experience of making the foundation elixirs and the foundation breaking elixirs before, and it was a walk in the park for him. Making a foundation elixir wasn't a problem at all. The night passed uneventfully. The next day, before the sky had even brightened, Li Jingning's second cave dwelling at the foot of the mountain was lightly touched by someone. Li Jingning was slightly surprised. He thought that it was Meng Jueguang and the others who wanted to find him for something. After all, although he had told Linny about refining the foundation building pills last night, and Linny had agreed to it on the spot without saying anything, even a layman like Li Jingning knew that refining pills was definitely not a simple matter. Even if the grade of the foundation building pill was not considered high, the process of refining it was still very exhausting. In order to guarantee the success rate, one must make thorough preparations. This preparation did not only refer to the refining materials, but more importantly, the alchemist himself had to spend time to adjust his state and recover his spirit. This time varied from person to person. Some were long, some were short, but according to Li Jingning's knowledge, even the most powerful alchemists, from the moment they received the commission, would need at least a day to prepare. As for those who immediately started refining the foundation building pills as soon as they received the materials, they were simply like cannons that could not guarantee the success rate. One must know that even if one meticulously prepared, the majority of alchemists only had a success rate of 20 to 30%. And if one did not make sufficient preparations, then one could not even hope for this 20 to 30% success rate. It was very likely that one would only have a success rate of 10%, or even less. In this way, The 3 sets of foundation-building pills that Li Jingming had taken from Meng Jiaguang were not even enough to go to waste. However, according to his observations, his current boss Lin Yi had always been calm and steady. When it came to refining pills, no matter how careful he was, he should not be so reckless. Therefore, at the moment when the restriction of the Immortal's Cave was triggered, Li Jingming did not even think about Lin Yi and the foundation-building pills. Instead, he was thinking that since Meng Jiaguang and the others came to find him so early in the morning, they might be up to something again. So, he was prepared to secretly do some dirty tricks that could not be seen in the light. However, when he opened the door of the Immortal's Cave, Li Jingming could not help but be stunned again. There was no one in front of him. There was no sign of Meng Jiaguang and the others as he expected. Chapter 38:18. Could it be? Li Jingming couldn't help but be shocked. This inconspicuous corner of the stone crack was one of the secret communication methods that he and Lin Yi had agreed on. Except for Lin Yi, no one else would put things in this corner that would normally not be noticed. Seeing that there was no one around, Li Jingming quickly put the gray cloth bag into his sleeve, then turned around and returned to his cave residence. Closing the door of the cave residence and closing the restriction, Li Jingming took a deep breath and suppressed the excitement in his heart. He reached out and slowly opened the cloth bag. Then, his eyes suddenly widened. This is too fast. Looking at the 2 elixirs lying quietly in the cloth bag, even though Li Jingming had been mentally prepared in advance, he still couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. These 2 elixirs were naturally the foundation establishment pills that Lin Yi had refined for him. They had only talked about it last night, but the result was that it was delivered early this morning before dawn. This kind of speed, this kind of efficiency, even a guy like Li Jingming, who was born in a native big family on the Heaven Stage Island, couldn't help but be stunned. In an instant, Li Jingming couldn't help but be in awe of his boss, Lin Yi. Lin Yi did what he said to him, this little brother, on the one hand. Compared to him, a backer like Meng Jiaguang was already thrown 10 streets away. Now, in Li Jingming's heart, there was no comparison. On the other hand, Li Jingming was amazed at Lin Yi's attainments in alchemy. From the time he finished talking to Lin Yi last night until now, it had only been a total of 4 hours. If it was any other alchemist, he was afraid that they wouldn't even have time to prepare. But his boss, Lin Yi, had already directly taken out the foundation establishment pills, and what made Li Jingming excited was that there were 2 of them. He had given a total of 3 sets of materials to Lin Yi. In the end, Lin Yi didn't need any preparation to directly start refining, and he even successfully refined 2 of them. The success rate was nearly 70%, which was simply incredible. On this point, Li Jingming thought wrong. In fact, Lin Yi didn't just give him these 2 last night. He'd given him a total of 5 pills, but he didn't want it to be too shocking. He just didn't want to shock people too much, so he kept the other 3 for himself. Otherwise, he was afraid that it would shock Li Jingming even more. Born in a local big family on Heaven Stage Island, Li Jingming's vision was far above other grassroots cultivators, and even with his vision, he was completely stunned by Lin Yi's alchemy attainments. Originally, Li Jingming thought that for a powerful newcomer like Lin Yi, alchemy should only be a side job, and his attainments could not be too deep. After all, the alchemist only had a level but no strength. This kind of thing had long become common sense. And judging from Lin Yi's previous strong and overbearing performance, his strength was not even close to the word weak. Even among the experts of the same level, Lin Yi was definitely a first-class strong person. And such a person turned out to be an alchemist. This in itself had subverted everyone's understanding, but now Li Jingming found that his own boss Lin Yi's attainments in alchemy were even far above the average alchemist. Other than being shocked, he could not find any other words to describe his current mood. Holding the 2 foundation establishment pills for a long time, Li Jingming muttered with a sigh. Boss Lin Yi is really a strange person. Not to mention that his own strength was unbelievably strong. The key was that he treated his subordinates very well. Even Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai, who were originally inconspicuous grassroots newcomers, were now ahead of the other newcomers of Blue Cloud Pavilion, and even the newcomers of Rushing Sky Pavilion and Mysterious Pavilion by a large margin. This was simply unimaginable in the past. Now, he found out that this guy was actually an alchemist with profound attainments. Even Li Jingming, who had a tough mind, had no temper towards his own boss Lin Yi. At this moment, he no longer had any temper towards his own boss Lin Yi. If it was before this, Li Jingming still thought that Lin Yi's luck was just a little better than his, and that in time, he would still have the chance to surpass Lin Yi. But now, he had no such thoughts at all. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that Li Jingming was now completely convinced by his boss. A monster like this wasn't something a normal person like him could compare to. Perhaps only a legendary person like Miracle Dr. Dan, Zhang Liju, could be compared to him. Although he had already given up on the thought of chasing Lin Yi, Li Jingming's desire to break through to Foundation establishment didn't decrease, but instead, it became even stronger. They were all followers under Lin Yi, and Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai were already one step ahead and had succeeded in Foundation establishment. If this dragged on, he would only fall further and further behind, and this was a situation that Li Jingming absolutely didn't want to see. Because the stronger Lin Yi was, the more unpredictable he was. This also meant that the followers under him would have a brighter future, and the more determined they would be. As a result, the competition between the followers would inevitably become more intense. Although Li Jingming admired Lin Yi from the bottom of his heart, it didn't mean that he was convinced by people like Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai, and it didn't mean that he was willing to be inferior to them. These people were just lucky, receiving boss Lin Yi's favor right from the start, and that was why they were one step ahead of him in Foundation establishment. Now, Li Jingming also had 2 Foundation establishment pills in his hands, and there was hope for him to break through in the near future. This also meant that the battle for the number 1 follower under Lin Yi had just begun. However, the Foundation establishment pill didn't have an absolute effect on breaking through to Foundation establishment. In fact, it was only used to change the meridians in the human body to make it more suitable for training, and it could only help to a certain extent in breaking through to Foundation establishment. It didn't mean that any Sky-class Full Circle Master would definitely succeed after taking the Foundation establishment pill. Foundation establishment was the most important process for all cultivators. At this time, the stability of the Foundation directly determined how far one could go in the future, so this process couldn't be replaced by pills. If one wanted to break through to the Foundation establishment realm, at the very least, the most crucial condition was that one's own foundation was sufficient. Only by relying on one's own strength could one truly touch the barrier between the peak of the heaven stage and the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm. External items like the Foundation establishment pill could stimulate one's breakthrough. Chapter 38-19. Mobile website. Please inform each other to recommend the promotional introduction to your QQ group, Weibo/WeChat, Forum Tiabao. With Li Jingming's current strength, breaking through to the Foundation building realm was not difficult at all. Basically, it could be said to be a piece of cake. Moreover, he had 2 Foundation building pills in his hands. Even if he failed the first time, he would still have a second chance. Let's not talk about how smug Li Jingming was and how he was preparing to break through to the Foundation establishment realm. On the other hand, after Lin Yi gave him 2 Foundation establishment pills, his pace was as calm as ever. When he should cultivate, he would cultivate. When he should imbue the spiritual herb seeds with true energy, he would imbue them with true energy. He even went to the Spirit Jade Hall to mine during the day. In any case, he had nothing to do. Apart from that, Lin Yi's most important task now was to guard the 85 elixir seeds in the space of the Jade Pendant, especially the 2 seeds of the heart-devouring exquisite grass. After all, it was directly related to when he could advance further. To Lin Yi, it could be said that he was surrounded by all kinds of strong enemies. Just relying on the strength of the early stage of Foundation establishment was already a bit of a stretch. Only by advancing to the middle stage of foundation establishment as soon as possible would he have more confidence, and be able to advance and retreat more freely. Another 3 days passed, and there was still no movement from the elixir seed in the space of the jade pendant. Even the usually calm Lenny couldn't help but feel a little uneasy at this time. Counting the days, it had been a full 22 days since these elixir seeds were transplanted into the space of the jade pendant. They should have borne fruit by now. In fact, this was indeed the case. Apart from Lenny, the first batch of spiritual herb seeds planted by the other rookies, whether they survived or died, were basically settled. Therefore, before the 6th round of the rookie challenge began, almost all the rookies around the arena were talking about the elixir seeds. Judging from the results of the Blue Cloud Pavilion's first attempt, it was not very optimistic. If someone was observant, they would realize that among all the rookies in Blue Cloud Pavilion, other than Lin Yi, Xiao Ran, Xiao Hongkai, and Li Jingming, the other 11 had experimented with a total of 23 spiritual herb seeds. In the end, they had successfully grown and were sent to the Spirit Medicine Nursery for scoring. There were only 2 of them. The 2 lucky fellows had each drawn a spirit herb seed that had an extremely strong vitality and a relatively low requirement for the outside world. Therefore, they had managed to gain something. However, the first batch of spirit herb seeds for the remaining 9 people, including Meng Tong, had been completely annihilated. Although this result was disastrous, it was still within reason. After all, it was very difficult for a newcomer's cave in Blue Cloud Pavilion to satisfy the spiritual energy requirements of the spiritual herb seeds. Moreover, because of the rookie challenge competition, many people couldn't even guarantee the supply of true qi at a fixed time. Rookies like Meng Tong and Chao Wu, who were frequently heavily injured in the challenge matches, could be found everywhere. This also made the Clear Cloud Pavilion disciples realize one thing: the elixir refinement round was nothing but a scam to them. The only use of the spirit herb seeds was to deduct points when the time came. Basically, no matter how many spirit herb seeds were collected, the points would be deducted. Even if a few spirit herb seeds were successfully cultivated, it would only be a few points deducted. If one wanted to rely on this segment to earn points, it would be if they wanted to rely on this segment to earn points, they would simply be blinded. But fortunately, most of the Blue Cloud Pavilion rookies already knew this, so they basically only reported the minimum of 10 spirit herb seeds. This segment would at most deduct 10 points. Apart from people like Chao Wu, who had the lowest points and was a weakling with no eyes. As long as the other rookies had some results in the challenge round, they would not have negative points deducted. Moreover, because everyone would have their points deducted together, there was almost no obvious impact on their ranking. However, someone suddenly recalled something. Back then, when the Spiritual Medicine Garden was registering for the spiritual medicine seeds, a certain maverick newcomer had registered an unprecedented 40 spiritual medicine seeds. The more one reported, the more points would be deducted. Now, this speculation had been verified to be an ironclad rule. Therefore, when the other rookies only needed to have 10 points deducted, this idiot who reported 40 spirit herb seeds had to have a total of 40 points deducted. Of course, there were also people who were betting that Lin Yu would be lucky enough to get 1 or 2 seeds out of the 40 seeds, but that would only reduce his points by a few points, that was all. Even if Lin Yu was strong enough to take first place, some things couldn't be solved with strength alone. Even the strongest person had to pay for their stupidity. Yo, the number 1 rookie of the Blue Cloud Pavilion who reported 40 spirit herb seeds, how's the spirit herb seed going? I don't think I've seen you report to the Spirit Herb Garden these past 2 days. While the crowd was discussing, 2 uninvited guests suddenly appeared. It was Kang Mingming and Zhong Pingliang. Although the 6th round of the newcomer challenge was about to begin, there was still a little time before then. They couldn't do anything big, but it was more than enough to find an old rival and have a few sarcastic remarks. As soon as Kang Mingming and Zhong Pingliang appeared, they naturally became the focus of the crowd, especially Kang Ming. Due to young Master Su Lingchong's special care, he was now in the limelight, no less than Lin Yi. He fully deserved to be the number 1 rookie of the Soaring Pavilion. Kang Xiaoming and Lin Yi were two people who had a deep grudge against each other in the common world. Now that they were in the North Island's welcoming pavilion, one of them became the #1 newcomer of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, and the other became the #1 newcomer of the Clear Cloud Pavilion. Watching these two fight in front of everyone, it was definitely a wonderful sight to behold. In an instant, everyone's eyes were focused on Lin Yi, and they didn't even try to hide their schadenfreude. Especially Meng Juiguang and Meng Tong. Since they weren't ready to take the Meridian heart-shattering pill, they had no choice but to endure Lin Yi's strong aura for the time being. Now that they could see Lin Yi being ridiculed by Kang Mingming, there was only one word that could describe it. It felt so good. Facing the ridiculing Kang Mingming, Lin Yi raised his eyebrows slightly. Instead of answering, he asked, "Don't tell me that the legendary new deacon has to be in charge of guarding the spirit herb nursery? That's really a tough job. It seems like I should find a chance to reward you with some spirit jade." Kang Mingming couldn't help but choke when he heard that. Zhong Pingliang, who was beside him, couldn't help but laugh secretly. Kang Mingming had tried so hard to come here to see Boss Lin Yi make a fool of himself, but he ended up choking on a single sentence. It was like the legendary rushing to be humiliated. It was a delightful scene. Chapter 38-20. The matter of Lin Yi being exchanged for good jade was now known by many people in Yingxin Pavilion. In the eyes of everyone, probably only a few of Lin Yi's own subordinates did not know about it. If they knew, driven by benefits, they might join in to cheat Lin Yi, this stupid boss. After all, as the old saying goes, "Don't let the goodies flow into the fields of outsiders." Kang Mingming's words made everyone smile, but no one interrupted in detail. They were afraid that if they said too much, Lin Yi would realize it. After all, no matter how stupid Lin Yi was, this kind of thing could still be easily exposed if it was said face to face. Lin Yi and the others looked at each other and smiled. The rumor that Lin Yi was cheated with waste jade was naturally heard by senior brother Ku Bai and Xiao Ran, and Lin Yi had already explained it to them using the same excuse that he had told senior brother Ku Bai in the past. Kang Mingming and the others were all gloating. They thought that Boss Lin Yi was really a fool who couldn't distinguish good jade and waste jade. They didn't know that they, who believed in such absurd words, were the real fools who still helped others to earn money after being cheated. Seeing that Lin Yi didn't bother to talk at all, Kang Mingming turned and said, "I came here this time because I want to communicate with you as an alchemist. In the first batch of experiments, I experimented with 6 elixir seeds. As a result, 3 of them were cultivated. There was only a 50% survival rate. I am not very satisfied with my results. What do you think, big newcomer Lin?" As soon as these words came out, the surrounding Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomers couldn't help but take a breath of cold air. 3 out of 6 seeds survived. A 50% survival rate. This result was simply beyond the efforts of all the Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomers. Apart from Lin Yi's group, the other 11 Blue Cloud Pavilion rookies had only managed to nurture 2 spiritual herb seeds. They were incomparable to Kang Mingming. According to the sissy manager of the Spirit Medicine Nursery, newbies like them would be lucky if 3 out of 10 spirit herb seeds could survive. Kang Mingming's 50% survival rate was already the limit. How ridiculous! If they weren't satisfied with this kind of result, then what was the point of living for the rest of them? They might as well go buy a piece of tofu and kill themselves. After exclaiming for a while, everyone's gaze once again landed on Lin Yi. He smiled faintly and said in a serious tone, "Only a 50% chance of survival, that's a little pathetic. Zhao Ming, you have to work hard, don't embarrass us alchemists." That look on Lin Yi's face was that of a senior to a junior, and it almost made everyone laugh. Taking advantage of the situation, Lin Yi was just too much of a scumbag. Gah! Kang Mingming's face darkened. His 50% survival rate had already blinded everyone in the Spirit Medicine Nursery. How dare you, an idiot who hadn't managed to nurture a single spiritual herb after such a long time, talk to me like this? Zhong Pingliang couldn't help but laugh secretly again. Kang Mingming wanted to show off in front of Boss Lin Yi, but not only did he fail, he even got stepped on by Boss Lin Yi. He was probably about to explode from anger. Is that so? Then I'd like to ask. How many have you managed to nurture after so many days, big newbie Lin? You won't bring shame to us alchemists, will you? Kang Mingming's face darkened as he forced a cold smile. Hee. Didn't you just say that the spirit medicine nursery is a part of the new manager's job? Can't you just keep your eyes open and watch? Still, your math was taught by a PE teacher. Don't you have confidence in yourself? Lin Yi looked at Kang Mingming strangely, as if he was worried about his stupidity. With so many people looking at him like he was an idiot, Kang Mingming wanted to slap all of them until they became idiots. Unfortunately, that wasn't realistic. Even if he could fight, he wouldn't be able to defeat Lin Yi. Humph. You have a sharp tongue. I'll wait to see you cry. Kang Mingming humphed coldly. Seeing that the challenge was about to begin, he gave Zhong Pingliang a look and turned to leave. Zhong Pingliang laughed coldly in his heart. You idiot, haven't you had enough of being stepped on? Boss Lin Yi stepped on you all the way from the common world to Sky Island. The more you suffer, the braver you become. This mental fortitude wasn't something an ordinary person could have. It's a good thing I've joined Boss Lin Yi long ago. Otherwise, who knows when I'll be stepped on again. Looking at Kang Mingming and Zhong Pingliang's backs as they left, senior brother Bitter, Xiaoran, and the others looked at each other. Although they had successfully defeated the arrogant guy with their words, they couldn't help but look at Lin Yi with worry in their eyes. Junior brother Lin, are you sure you can handle those elixir seeds alone? Senior brother Bitter couldn't help but ask after a moment of silence. Not only did Lin Yi take 40 seeds for himself, but he also took Xiaoran and Xiao Hongcai's. Even senior brother Bitter didn't know that Lin Yi still had Li Jingming and Zhong Pingliang's elixir seeds. But he knew one thing: if something happened to Lin Yi, then they'd all be wiped out in the trial. Although, with the condition of the Clear Cloud Pavilion's newbies, it wouldn't be a surprise if they were all wiped out, but what the Bitter senior brother was worried about was that after being provoked by Kang Xiaoming, Lin Yi might go all out and waste his pure energy on these seeds. Once he used up too much of his true qi, not only would his strength be affected, there was a high chance that he would reveal his flaws during the challenge. This was something that even the strongest of masters couldn't avoid, and Lin Yi, the #1 newcomer of Clear Cloud Pavilion, was no exception. Even senior brother Bitter, who had always been honest and kind, couldn't help but wonder if this was a trap that Meng Jiuguang and the others had set for Lin Yi. According to their previous guesses, after young Master Su Lingchong's appearance in the last round, Meng Jiuguang would definitely make a big move, and this big move might not be aimed at the two underlings, Xiaoran and Xiao Hongcai. Instead, it was very likely that he would make a move on Lin Yi. After all, with young Master Su's involvement, it would be child's play to deal with Xiaoran and Xiao Hongcai. If you want to catch a thief, you must first catch the king. Senior brother Bitter wasn't the only one who had this concern. Even Xiaoran and Xiao Hongcai could easily think of this. After all, Kang Mingming and Meng Jiuguang were all young Master Su's underlings, and they were all in the same group. It was normal for them to have this kind of tacit understanding. Chapter 38-21. Senior brother Ku was stunned, but Xiaoran nodded in agreement. That's right, we don't need these points at all. Even if they were completely wiped out, the two of them would at most lose 10 points each. But for them, who were experts in the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm, so what? Meng Tong, who was also an expert in the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm, was completely suppressed by the two of them. Other than Lin Yi the boss, the other newcomers in Blue Cloud Pavilion did not have the strength to compete with the two of them. For them, the following newcomer challenge competition had become a feast for points. In the following newcomer challenge competition, Xiaoran and Xiao Hongcai could easily grab over 100 points. In comparison, the 10 points deducted from the trial of spiritual medicine was not worth mentioning. It was not only the two of them. For Lin Yi, who had registered for 40 spiritual medicine seeds, the consequences of being completely wiped out were far less severe than imagined. This was because he had built a foundation by getting full marks in the previous 2 rounds. Even if he lost 40 points, the other newcomers had no chance of catching up to him. In the entire Blue Cloud Pavilion, the only newcomer who could pose a threat to Lin Yi was Meng Tong, who was ranked 2nd. If Meng Tong could crush his opponents in the newcomer challenge competition, and Lin Yi lost 40 points, then there would still be a chance to kick Lin Yi off his pedestal. Unfortunately, Meng Tong was still recovering from his injuries. Not to mention dealing with Lin Yi, he could not even overcome the 2 mountains of Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai, who were Lin Yi's subordinates. If this situation continued, Meng Tong would never be able to catch up to Lin Yi in this lifetime. In this way, for Lin Yi's team, whether they were completely wiped out in the trial of spiritual medicine or not, and whether they would lose a lot of points, it didn't matter anymore. After figuring this out, the bitter senior brother could not help but smile. When one's strength was strong enough to surpass everyone else, then no matter how many twists and turns there were in the process, the bitter senior brother could not help but smile. How big of a mistake would there be? The outcome had already been decided. However, at this time, Lin Yi said indifferently, "But I don't care if you lack these points. However, who said that all my elixir seeds would be wiped out?" "Huh!" Senior brother Bitter and the others were immediately stunned. The results of the first batch of experiments by the other newcomers were already out. If there were any spirit herb seedlings that could be nurtured to live, they wouldn't be able to survive. He must have been sent to the spirit medicine nursery to be graded. Seedlings of spirit herbs had much higher environmental requirements than seeds of spirit herbs. With the conditions of the newcomers in the welcoming pavilion, even the best newcomers in the soaring sky pavilion were far from being able to meet the basic requirements of a seedling of spirit herbs. If they didn't hand over the seedlings of spirit herbs after they were nurtured, then they would definitely die in their hands. All his previous efforts had gone to waste. Therefore, as long as someone successfully nurtured a seed of spirit herbs, they would immediately send it to the spirit medicine nursery. Otherwise, no matter how many seedlings of spirit herbs were nurtured, it would be useless. According to what senior brother Bitter and the others knew, these days Lin Yi had never been to the spirit medicine nursery. This also meant that no matter how many seeds Lin Yi had nurtured in the first batch of experiments, at least one thing was certain. He had not nurtured a single one of them. This result was a heavy blow to Lin Yi, who had always been invincible. In addition, when Kang Ming came over to ridicule him, senior brother Bitter and the others were afraid that Lin Yi would be depressed, so they deliberately brought up this topic to enlighten him. Unexpectedly, this guy didn't seem to be affected at all. "Don't worry. Since this matter has been handed over to me, there's nothing to worry about. When the time comes, just wait and see the results." Lin Yi smiled at them and said. Senior brother Bitter and the others looked at each other. Although they still couldn't understand where Lin Yi's confidence came from, they still nodded in unison. After all, ever since they met Lin Yi, this guy had never failed to do what he said he would do. So this time, it should be no exception. In the 6th round of the Blue Cloud Pavilion Newcomer Challenge, other than the disturbance at the beginning, everything else was going according to everyone's expectations. Xiao Hongkai and Xiao Ran, the 2 mountains under Lin Yi, challenged one after another to obtain points. As for Meng Tong, he was the only one among the remaining newcomers who could pose a threat to them. Although many people, including Lin Yi, thought that young Master Su would make a big move after seeing his appearance in the last round, at least in this round, it seemed that Meng Tong was still holding back. In fact, he had no choice but to hold back. He had not recovered from his injuries from the last time he fought with Xiao Hongkai. Even if he recovered, with his strength in the early stage of foundation establishment, he might not be a match for Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai. Therefore, the only thing Meng Tong could do now was to pick up the soft persimmons after Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai challenged them. Although this method made him, the self-proclaimed boss of the Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomers, feel extremely aggrieved, given the current situation, there was no other way. Otherwise, with his current condition, he would only be looking for trouble if he faced either Xiao Ran or Xiao Hongkai. Apart from these three, the remaining two Blue Cloud Pavilion top 5 newcomers, Lin Yi, the number 1 newcomer, was idling around as usual. As for Li Jingming, he also did not have a chance to go on stage. However, even if he did not go on stage to show his strength, with Lin Yi's golden finger, he could tell that this guy's temperament was completely different from before. Without a doubt, thanks to the 2 Foundation Establishment pills, Li Jingming had finally broken through to Foundation Establishment, becoming the 5th expert in the early stage of Foundation Establishment among the newcomers of Blue Cloud Pavilion. However, it was unknown whether it was because the other people present did not notice at all, or because Li Jingming hid it too well, but these people, including Meng Jueguang, did not notice the change in Li Jingming's body at all. From what they knew, Li Jingming was still at Heaven's stage great perfection. He was not an expert in the early stage of Foundation Establishment who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Meng Tong or fight with Lin Yi. This was the situation that Li Jingming, who deliberately kept a low profile, liked to see the most. Otherwise, Meng Jueguang might ask him to deal with Lin Yi, and that would be a little troublesome. The 6th round of the newcomers' challenge passed just like that. However, when Lin Yi returned to his cave abode and habitually entered the Jade Pendant's space, he inadvertently glanced around and was shocked by the scene in front of him. Chapter 38-22. For 22 days, the 85 elixir seeds had been silent. Now, after only 1 round of the challenge, they had all awakened. That's right, they had awakened. Although the seeds of these elixirs had not truly developed into seedlings, and strictly speaking, their current state was not much different from before. However, anyone with a discerning eye could see that they were different from the motionless state they were in before. They had awakened. The seed coat had begun to crack, and the young sprouts and roots were already bursting out. It was a scene full of vitality and prosperity. Lin Yi's heart, which was still in a state of anxiety, finally fell to the ground after seeing this. Including the 2 seeds of the heart-devouring exquisite grass, the 85 elixir seeds had all awakened. The space in the Jade Pendant didn't disappoint Lin Yi and gave him a big surprise. Before today's challenge, they were still in a state of collective silence. However, after a short afternoon, the 85 elixir seeds had all awakened. Even though Lin Yi had seen many strange things, he still couldn't help but feel a little strange at this moment. At first, there was no movement. However, as soon as Kong Mingming taunted, the 85 elixir seeds all awakened. This was simply a slap in the face. If Kong Mingming knew about this, he would definitely faint from anger. But for the troubled Lin Yi, this Kong Xiaoming was truly his lucky star. He didn't know how long he'd have to wait for Kong Xiaoming to appear otherwise. Everything has spirituality. This saying is really true. Lin Yi couldn't help but smile. If everything went as expected, in the next few days, the 85 elixir seeds that had awakened would really start to germinate. Under the nourishment of the pure spiritual qi in the space in the Jade Pendant, it was only a matter of time before they grew into seedlings. However, Lin Yi suddenly realized that it seemed that it was necessary to go to the marketplace. Now, including the 2 seeds of the heart-devouring exquisite grass, the 85 elixir seeds had all awakened. With the unique conditions of the space in the Jade Pendant, it was almost a matter of success to successfully cultivate them into seedlings. And because the growth cycle of these elixir seeds had been artificially accelerated by countless times, that day would not be far away. Then, as expected, Lin Yi would soon be able to harvest 2 stalks of heart-devouring exquisite grass, and he could start preparing to refine the most important foundation-building pill. However, if he wanted to refine the foundation-building pill, just relying on 2 stalks of heart-devouring exquisite grass was clearly not enough. Furthermore, with his current spirit medicine reserves, there was no way for him to gather the other ingredients. In order not to delay refining the foundation-building pill, it was necessary to go to the market square in the near future. Although he knew that if he appeared in the market as Lin Er, it was very likely that he would run into his enemy, Yuzhe, and even his master, Nan Tianyong. This threat was definitely not to be underestimated. However, compared to the foundation building pill, for Lin Yi, this risk was nothing. After all, he couldn't just avoid risks. It was not Lin Yi's style to not even care about the ingredients needed to refine the foundation building pill. After making up his mind, the next morning, Lin Yi put on the Thousand Threads mask and appeared in the marketplace as Lin Air. Although they were the materials for the foundation building pill last time, he had bought it in the street for a total of 8 pieces of spirit jades, and he had successfully refined the foundation establishment pill, but this time, Lin Yi did not intend to repeat it. Firstly, there were a lot of people on the street, and it was difficult to buy all the ingredients in the same store. This meant that they would need to spend a lot of time looking for the ingredients, which would be easily noticed by people with ulterior motives. This would greatly increase the chances of encountering Yuzhe. Secondly, the quality of the herbs that could be bought in the outer streets were generally not high. Last time, because he only had a few spirit jades on hand, he did not have a choice. Thus, Lin Yi could only make do with what he had. Fortunately, the heart-devouring exquisite grass that he had painstakingly picked in the back mountain was of excellent quality. Thus, it did not affect the quality of the foundation building pill. However, this time, even with the help of the space in the jade pendant, the quality of the 2 stalks of heart-devouring exquisite grass could not be compared to the stalk from last time due to the innate deficiency of the spiritual medicine seeds. In this way, if Lin Yi still wanted to guarantee the success rate of refining the foundation establishment pill, he would have to work on other spiritual medicine materials. Due to these 2 reasons, compared to the noisy outer street and middle street, the inner street of the market was obviously more suitable for Lin Yi's requirements. However, not everyone could easily enter the inner street. Whether it was strength or status, Lin Yi was still far from reaching the threshold of the inner street. Moreover, today was not the opening day of the inner street that was once a month. However, Lin Yi finally managed to sneak into the inner street as he wished. This was thanks to the shopkeeper Hong Zhonghong of the Hong Merchant Guild, because he had given Lin Yi a spirit jade card of the Heaven Stage Island Commerce Alliance. With this card opening the way, the guards of the inner street only looked at Lin Yi with slight surprise and let him pass. Just as Hong Zhonghong said, this kind of spirit jade card was not something that anyone could obtain. Looking at the entire Heaven Stage Island, only a small group of people whose status was recognized by the Commerce Alliance could have this kind of treatment. This was far more useful than the identity of the inner disciples of the 3 pavilions. It was not an exaggeration to say that the inner street was a place that most of the inner disciples of the 3 pavilions did not have the right to enter. As long as the spirit jade card was shown, even if it was a dog, the guards would not hesitate to let it in. Because even if it was a dog with a spirit jade card. No one had a reason to stop it, let alone the right to do so. Because it was not the opening day of the inner street, the scene that Lin Yi saw when he entered the inner street this time was far more deserted than the previous 2 times. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was completely deserted. But even so, these merchants did not care at all. To be able to enter the inner street, even the most inconspicuous merchant meant that there was a huge force behind it. Their appearance here was not necessarily to compete with a giant like the Hong Merchant Guild. More importantly, their purpose was to declare their existence. Even if they could not earn much spirit jade, they at least had to create a signboard in this exclusive area of the upper class, so that people would not ignore them. After entering the inner street, Lin Yi went straight to the Hong Merchant Guild. Hong Zhonghong had left a good impression on him last time. Although he did not plan to buy any valuable treasures this time, intuition told Lin Yi that it was not a bad thing to have more contact with this kind of old and wise merchant. Chapter 38-23. Even though there were many guests, as soon as Lin Yi walked into the Hong Chamber of Commerce, he was recognized by the manservant at the door. "Young hero Lin, please come upstairs." "You know me?" Lin Yi was surprised. If this person was Hong Zhong, it would be easier to understand. After all, he gave him a spirit jade card, so it was normal to have some impression of him. However, it was a bit exaggerated that this manservant, whom he did not know, knew him. Of course, we have to memorize the names and appearances of the important guests every morning and evening to avoid neglecting any important guests. This is the rule of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. The manservant smiled and led Lin Yi to a private room on the second floor. Lin Yi could not help but praise him in his heart. The Hong Chamber of Commerce was indeed a top chamber of commerce on Heaven Level Island. Stepping into the private room, Manager Hong Zhong immediately stood up to welcome him. Young hero Lin, it's been a long time. Lin Yi bowed slightly and returned the greeting. Shopkeeper Hong, I hope you have been well since we last met. Sorry to bother you again. Young hero Lin, you are too kind. It is our Hong Merchant Group's honor to have you patronize us. We could not ask for more. What do you need this time? Hong Zhong laughed. He was secretly surprised that Lin Er had not been crippled by Yuzha and the others. He was indeed capable. I need to prepare some elixirs. The higher the quality, the better. 5 sets. Lin Yi took out a list and handed it to Hong Zhong. There were dozens of elixirs listed on it. To be safe, in order to prevent the recipe of the foundation building pill from being recognized by others, the elixirs needed for the foundation building pill were only a small part of the list. As for the rest of the elixirs listed on the list, apart from being used as a cover, they were also used to fill up the elixir storage. After all, as an alchemist, he did not need to have all the elixir storage, but at least when he wanted to refine some common basic elixirs, he would not have to personally run errands every time. He even had to think of a way to collect all the elixir's ingredients one by one. That would be too unprofessional. Hong Zhong took Lin Yi's list and glanced at it briefly before asking in surprise. Forgive this old man for asking, but is young hero Lin an alchemist? Other than alchemists who would gather so many elixirs and materials at once, there was no other way. Even if other people wanted to find someone to refine pills for them, they would at most buy the corresponding spiritual herbs and materials. They would not spend spiritual jades on so many things that they might not even use in their lifetime. That's right, I am indeed an alchemist. However, I only know a little about it. Please excuse me, Manager Hong. Lin Yi nodded lightly. Since it was very likely that he would have to deal with shopkeeper Hong for a long time in the future, Lin Yi did not intend to hide anything about this matter. After all, if he needed spiritual jades, selling some pills to shopkeeper Hong was not a bad choice. Furthermore, there was no need to deliberately conceal the identity of an alchemist. If he chose to conceal it at this time, it would not be good if he leaked it or was discovered in the future. Seeing that Lin Yi admitted it, Hong Zhong couldn't help but be shocked. However, on the surface, he smiled from ear to ear. Since ancient times, heroes come from the young. This saying is indeed true. Young hero Lin has a bright future. Hong Zhong's words were a little exaggerated. Although alchemists had a high status, they were generally weak. In the world of practitioners where the strong ruled, they didn't have a bright future. After all, Miracle Dr. Dan St. Zhongliju was a freak who could step into the top tier of alchemists. There wouldn't even be one in a few hundred years. However, if the 2 foundation-breaking pills from last time were made by Lin Er himself, then it would be more than enough to be worthy of this title. After being in Hong Merchant Association for so many years, Hong Zhong had his own way of dealing with people. Although, he really wanted to know if the 2 foundation-breaking pills from last time were made by Lin Er. However, before their relationship deepened and stabilized, he would not be stupid enough to ask such a question. This time, it was enough for him to know that Lin Er was an alchemist. Young hero Lin, please wait for a moment in the private room. I will get someone to prepare it. Hong Zhong passed the list to the servant who was waiting at the door. As it involved more than 10 types of ingredients, although Hong Merchant Association had all of them, it would still take a lot of time. Lin Yi nodded. Since he had nothing to do, he decided to take the time to walk around Hong Merchant Association. There were so many valuable ingredients. Even if he didn't plan to buy them, it wouldn't be a bad thing to take the opportunity to learn more about them. However, what Lin Yi didn't expect at all was that when he was walking around Hong Merchant Association, he bumped into someone out of nowhere. It was Yuja. As the saying goes, enemies don't meet unless they're enemies. At the corner of the display cabinets on the second floor, the two of them met face to face without any mental preparation. In that instant, both of them froze. In Lin Yi's expectation, because today wasn't the opening day of the inner street, a normal inner disciple like Yuja shouldn't be able to enter the inner street, much less appear in this Hong Merchant Association. Otherwise, if Yuja had the ability to enter and exit the inner street freely, he wouldn't have to wait until the inner street was open to the public like he did with himself. As a result, Lin Yi had been extra careful when he'd entered the market, especially when he'd passed through the outer and middle streets. He'd tried his best to avoid being noticed by anyone, in case there were Yuja's eyes. But now that he'd entered the inner street, he'd let his guard down. After all, in theory, Yuja didn't have the right to enter the inner street. The possibility of him appearing in the inner street was almost zero. However, Lin Yi forgot that Yuja wasn't alone. He had a master, Nan Tianyong, the supervising deacon of Rising Sky Pavilion. With Nan Tianyong's status, it was naturally easy for him to enter and exit the inner street. However, even so, he couldn't bring Yuja with him. The problem was that he had the same Spirit Jade card as Lin Yi. Of course, this Spirit Jade card did not come from the Hong Chamber of Commerce, but from another top chamber of commerce in the Merchant Union. In fact, with Nan Tianyong's own strength and status, there was still a long way to go before he could obtain this Spirit Jade card. However, he had two more powerful brothers, and this Spirit Jade card was borrowed from one of them. In order to investigate Lin Air, Nan Tianyong specially borrowed this Spirit Jade card. Chapter 38-24. He couldn't forget about the Star Inkstone. Apart from scheming to get it back from Lin Air, Yuja would use his master Nan Tianyong's privilege to come to the inner streets every few days because he often wandered around the market. All the large merchants, including the Hong Merchant Group, were his targets. If one piece of Star Inkstone appeared in the Hong Merchant Group, then perhaps there would be a second piece. This was something that no one could say for sure. And even if there wasn't a Star Inkstone, perhaps he could come across other treasures. He, Yuja, had stayed in the library for 3 years, and his ability to recognize certain treasures was even better than some treasure appraisers in the merchant group. Perhaps he would have a chance to pick up some leftovers. As for him appearing in the Hong Merchant Group at this moment, it wasn't strange at all. Although the Hong Merchant Group had said that his master, Nan Tianyong, was not welcome after the previous incident, they had never said that even he, Yuja, could not enter. And because of the same deduction as Lin Yi, although Yuja had been paying attention to the outer and middle streets of the market, even urging his master Nan Tianyong to spend a lot of Spirit Jade to find some merchants to monitor Lin Air's movements, he had never thought that he would actually meet Lin Air at the Hong Merchant Group when the inner streets weren't open to the public. The Star Inkstone was stolen, and he ambushed Lin Air halfway, but he was beaten half to death instead. Yuja's resentment towards this Lin Air could be said to be bone deep. He wanted nothing more than to skin him and drink his blood. Otherwise, he wouldn't have schemed so much, and even dug 3 feet into the ground to find Lin Air. But now that they really met face to face without any warning, Yuja was like Lin Yi, instantly stunned. After a moment, the two of them reacted at the same time, and their first reaction was to kill each other. After all, whether it was Lin Yi or Yuja, they both knew that they would not rest until one of them died. Both of them knew that they would not rest until one of them was dead, and there was no possibility of them shaking hands and making peace. This kind of enmity was far more fatal than the enmity between Lin Yi and the people in the welcoming pavilion. Su Lingchong and Meng Jieguang also saw Lin Yi as a thorn in their side, but it wasn't to the point where they would not rest until one of them died. But it wasn't to the point where they would fight to the death. At the very least, they wouldn't take the risk to kill Lin Yi. Even Yuja's master, Nan Tianyong, did not have such a strong killing intent towards Lin Air. Only Yuja was determined to kill Lin Air. There was only one reason. Star Inkstone. Cultivators were the most realistic group of people. In the face of benefits, there were no eternal friends, and there were no eternal enemies, unless it was someone who was deeply subdued, like Xiao Ran, Xiao Hongkai, Li Jingning, and Zhong Pingliang. Even if he had been beaten half to death by Lin Second, to tell the truth, Yuzha wouldn't have gone to such lengths to dig out Lin Second. There was only one reason for him to do this: the Starring Stone. The Starring Stone. In the face of such a precious treasure that could change the fate of a cultivator, Yuzha wouldn't even recognize his own father. How could Yuzha possibly ignore Lin Er, an enemy who had beaten him half to death? That would really be strange. In the blink of an eye, the duo's aura was raised to the extreme, and their strongest killing moves were about to be unleashed. After all, they had already fought to the death before. They were both well aware of each other's strength. Whether it was Lin Yi, who had the upper hand, or Yuzha, who had the advantage in terms of level, they didn't dare underestimate the opponent in front of them. Otherwise, if they weren't careful, they might lose their lives. Although they hadn't clashed yet, the killing moves of both sides had already been revealed. One was the Fatal Chain Sword 24 forms, and the other was the Fiery 8 Trigrams Palm 22 forms. The powerful aura that the two instantly unleashed caused the surrounding display racks to tremble. It was as if a storm was about to come. The surrounding customers couldn't help but be shocked. Although Yuzha and Lin Yi were at the peak of the early stage of Foundation establishment, one was at the mid-stage of Foundation establishment. In a place like the inner street, this kind of strength couldn't even be considered powerful, but they had no intentions of interfering. Those who could enter the inner street were either rich or noble. Who knew if these two were the grandsons of some big shot? If they rashly interfered, they might get into trouble, so they might as well watch the show from the sidelines. However, in the next moment, the shaking display racks suddenly calmed down, and the strongest killing moves that Yuzha and Lin Yi had prepared to unleash also disappeared at the same time. It gave people the feeling that none of this had happened. This wasn't because the two of them stopped voluntarily, but because they had no choice but to stop. This was because an unfathomable aura that was far more powerful than them had enveloped them in an instant. Faced with such an insurmountable difference in level, whether it was Lin Yi or Yuzha, they couldn't ignore this warning. If they didn't care and continued to attack, they might have become two corpses before they could even unleash their killing moves, never to step out of the Hong Merchant Guild again. Settle your personal grudges outside. The Hong Merchant Guild forbids fighting, otherwise don't blame me for being impolite. Please conduct yourselves with dignity. The cold voice of a guest expert traveled into everyone's ears. Although they couldn't see him in person, just this unfathomable aura was enough to intimidate one side. Lin Yi couldn't help but be secretly shocked. He had been on the Heavenly Island for more than 2 months, and he had seen many experts. However, judging from the aura alone, this guest expert of the Hong Merchant Guild could definitely be ranked in the top 10. Counting carefully, the other experts who could be ranked above were probably only the few elders from the 3 pavilions who had appeared before, and Ram Jia, the Hall Master of the Law Enforcement Hall, who was only seen once in 100 years. Other than them, the guest expert of the Hong Merchant Guild was the strongest. Any random guest expert had such terrifying strength. As the top chamber of commerce on the Heavenly Five Islands, the Hong Merchant Guild's background was really unfathomable. Lin Yi was just shocked, but at this moment, Yuzha was really frightened. His master, Nantian Yong, had suffered a great loss a while ago. Ever since he was thrown out of the window on the 2nd floor, even with Nantian Yong's arrogant and overbearing character and his powerful background that was not inferior to the 2nd-generation young masters of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, he still didn't dare to take a step into the Hong Merchant Guild. Even when he brought Yuzha into the inner street recently, he was a little scared and tried to hide as far away as possible, for fear of provoking the dissatisfaction of the few guest experts of the Hong Merchant Guild. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.